Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's TFE Live. Christopher Gillingham is first on from Leamington, over there in Andrew McIrvine's country. Ben Eels, Alex Hayworth, Morris Stevens. Morris saying good afternoon from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Anika Salmonen. John Emmett, usually first, is up in Weymouth. He is on as well. We have John's latest report coming up. Paul Homchick. Hi, Paul. Stingrays up in Seattle. Ted Ryman down in Cape Town. Lots of our regulars. Michael Colcliffe in G'day, he says, from Port Stephens in Australia, the opposite corner of the world. Alan Long from Prince Rupert, BC, British Columbia. It's fire season again up in BC. Bruce Andrews, is watching, and lots of others as we get ready to put this show number 435 on the road.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, come on. Monica Diaz says, sorry, but I'm watching football, Spain and Italia. Pindar, I'm going to call him Pindar. He's got a glass of wine. That is McIrvine. He's got a glass of wine. He's smiling about that. Welcome, everybody, to this, our show, number 435 for Tuesday, the 6th of July. Julia, I trust you are well.
Absolutely.
Hot tips?
We survived the 4th of July.
We did indeed. And of course, we are live here from the Beach Street Yacht Club Studio B, where we normally are in the beautiful Marina District of San Francisco. My co-host, landlady, and Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, Julia Vatican, is here with me. And of course, I'm your host, Tom, something or another. We may change this to the Tom Ehman Live or something, because it's people are confused. Is it TFE Live? Is it Sailing Illustrated? Is it the Julia Show? Maybe we change it to the Tom and Julia Show. But
no.
Go ahead.
No, I think it's time for Tom Ehman Show.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems egoistic or something.
It does.
Regardless, welcome everybody. Show number 435, as I mentioned. Delighted to have you all here. Particularly happy to have Andrew McIrvine, who will join us in a moment. Thanks to Andrew Pindar, who was our esteemed guest on Friday. That show's had a lot of views. And I just wanted to review some of the comments, because we keep telling you, we go back and look through the comments after the show, as I did over the weekend. Rob Fry, just as we were going off the air, this is interesting news, said, in Olympic news, Pete and Blair, meaning Pete Burling and Blair Tuke, the top 49er sailors in the world, certainly New Zealand's top pair, they're the representatives, and Leo and Ibu, his crew, Leo Takahashi, who's representing Japan, also Kiwi, they have been training up on the Gold Coast, up in Brisbane, I guess, and due to the halt in the NZO's travel bubble, looks like they're going direct, or so Rob Fry, Leo's dad, said at the end of our show on Friday. So they're going direct to Japan, not able to go back to NZ. Husted said, Mark Husted up in Sweden, who, of course, is an Aussie who's married to a Thai. Talk about an international guy, an Aussie who's married to a Thai wife. Mm-hmm. Very cosmopolitan gentleman. Husted said he was agreeing about our little discussion again about putting kids on big boats, getting kids on all kinds of boats. And then he said, how about the old guys go and try foiling? Which Peter Stevenson would certainly agree. Julia, you would agree with that. If I go try foiling, will you go try foiling?
No.
No?
How's that?
Maybe we get McIrvine to go with us and we'll all go foiling. So that was the second comment. Thanks, Mark Husted, for that. And the third comment coming out of the show was really cool. And look, we got top fan, and sharer. I didn't know you could be a sharer, but that's what Ed Worley is. And he supports strongly the outreach and mentoring is crucial for sailing to grow. And that was in response to something that Emmett was saying and some of the other comments on that show. Thank you again, Andrew Pindar, and to all of you who comment. We leave comments open, as you all know, even in replay. Today, Dr. Andrew, and they call him in the UK, but he is a doctor, British surgeon. He's obviously a Brit. He is a former admiral of the Royal Ocean Racing Club and Secretary General of the International Maxi Association. Julie, remind me to pull up his book. I've got his book here on the set.
Oh, yes, it's a beauty.
Thank him for that book that he sent, the yearbook of the IMA. We'll get to that in a sec. But speaking of 4th of July, we hope all of you who were celebrating it survived it, whether here or elsewhere in the world. We had reasonably unfoggy conditions. It wasn't too bad here, typical fog here in the Bay Area. But here is, you know who this crouton is? Do you recognize that, Julia? Him? This is a typical American celebrating the 4th of July.
Yes.
Who is it? Does that help?
I've forgotten.
Well, I put his picture up here, his facial. Yeah. Does that help?
Oh.
That's Zuckerberg on his powered, that's a foil. That's a, what do you call that? It's a powered foil board. And this is what he was in. Those things cost 20 grand a piece, but when but when you're one of the richest guys in the world, I guess
who cares?
You can afford, and he's got a bunch of them. Apparently he's going to produce them. I read in one article, I'm not sure that's true, but that's what some typical Americans do. Now, you know what? We're going to talk a lot about the Olympics, and you know what Zuck's sport was in high school?
Mm-mm.
There it is. He was co-captain of his high school fencing team.
Aha.
Apparently is and was and still is an avid fencer. Now, this came from a Fosey.
It explains a lot about his behavior.
This came from a Fosey down under. You got the Union Jack, obviously, on the bottom. I don't know if this is proper flag protocol, Dr. Hamish Ross, but he's got the Betsy Ross flag, the original 13 stars in a circle in the blue field in the American flag. That was sent by Dr. Hamish Ross, who said to the revolting colonies, Happy Independence Day. Julia,
yes.
We managed not to burn the place down. We had a little dinner, a barbecue down here in the grill room at the Beach Street Yacht Club, and we watched the fireworks on the tube here in the local, but it was too cold to go outside. And besides, you say it's illegal?
Yes.
To do these fireworks outside?
Any kind.
Sparklers?
Any kind.
So we do it inside and risk burning the whole damn place down.
Well, I think they're illegal inside too, but they're harder to detect.
How would anybody know?
Yeah.
Well, we had our red, white, and blue on. It's the only red, white, and blue shirt I have is my old Oracle from, I guess, the 2003 America's Cup.
I like it.
And you had your red, white, and blue scarf. So we celebrated here. Thanks to all of you who did. Hope you had a great, it was a long weekend, 4-day weekend for a lot of folks. Julia, your witness.
Yes, this.
Here's your new. We got.
There we go.
Julia's got a new program monitor. This little monitor right here, and then she's got this massive IMAX, so she can see the comments. So you got the comments up, okay?
I do.
Okay, good. That's working.
Please like, follow, and share. You can shallow too if you want.
You got another smile of Pindar's face. You can Fike, Lalo, and Fike, Shallow, and Lair. Like, follow. Well, comments welcome also in replay. Those of you watching replays, thousands of you do. Please support us. And Mark Orton Reed, I won't say the amount, but he gave us a substantial. He joined today as a patron via patreon.com/Join Sailing Illustrated. Thank you, Mark Reed, and to all the others who are supporting us with a little monthly contribution. Mark's was not insubstantial. Appreciate it very much. As I said, our special guest today, standing by in his home in London, is the esteemed Andrew, I'm going to say Pindar because Pindar was on the show Friday, but Andrew McIrvine, the British surgeon, one of the great leaders, one of the great spark plugs in our sport, and never more so than now. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. Interesting, that Union flag that you had on that flagpole was actually also the ancient one, because it doesn't have the St. Patrick's cross. So you can see there's less red on it than there is on the modern one.
So these are both ancient.
It's only got the St. George's cross of England and the St. Andrew's cross of Scotland, but not the St. Patrick red.
So is that proper protocol to display that below the American flag?
For 1776, I guess, is what that's about. So that would have been correct at that time.
At that time, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, Hamish Ross, who's a student of those sorts of things, is he on here, Julia?
I haven't seen him yet.
It's pretty early down there. Well, it's not that early. It's 8:10 in the morning in Auckland. But thank you. I won't call you doctor. Every time I do, I'm corrected because you're a British surgeon and you're called Mr. Why is that? Why are you called Mr. and not doctor?
It goes back to an inverted snobbery. At the time of surgeons were tradesmen, because they were barber surgeons, and physicians and apothecaries were gentry. and therefore they got the title of doctor. And so surgeons have kept up in some of the Commonwealth and in the UK have kept up this tradition of you become a doctor, and then when you get your board accreditation equivalent in America, then you revert back to Mr., Miss, Mrs. or Miss, depending. And we've kept that going.
But you don't mind if I call you doctor? I'm not downgrading you to being something with a barber pole with a. Didn't they have in those days a barber also, and the surgeons had a white rag with a red bloody thing around it on a pole?
That's right, because in those days it was common. One of the common medical treatments was to let blood out of you. They'd let blood out of you and put a bandage. So there's that stripy pole that you see outside barbers. That's what that signified.
We still do that here at the Beach Street Yacht Club on occasion. We let some blood.
There are some things we've just about given up leeches, but not entirely.
We never know.
You never know. Indeed, one never.
It may be the salvation we're looking for.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's. We're going to talk with Andrew about two things. First of all, we're going to talk about this terrific, the 90th anniversary Round the Island race, Round the Isle of Wight race, and Andrew, of course, raced in that, and he's going to give us some firsthand insight into that event. But before we do that, I thought we'd get warmed up with this video by the esteemed Matthew Sheehan, long time friend, both of Andrew's and mine. He's turned into probably the sport's leading videographer. He and I traded emails with him over the last 24 hours and said, hey, can I use this? And he said, by all means. He does long form videos, and it's YouTube. It's difficult to do. He records it, he edits, he does A-roll and B-roll and puts it all together and does a bloody magnificent job. And of course, we're live. We don't do any editing, as you all know, because we're Crotonic half the time. But that's quite different. But we're both long form, and we're going to get Matthew on the show. But let's watch his video. I think you all will enjoy this.
1.
When it comes to mass participation events in the UK, there are only 3 that are bigger than the annual Round the Island race: the London Marathon and the Great North and South Runs. This year, with over 1,200 entries and 7,000 sailors, the Island Sailing Club's Round the Island race is the biggest mass participation event in the UK since the first lockdown. This year, it's 90 years old. And despite the light breeze and low cloud, the race proved once again what a serious crowd puller it is. So here's a quick roundup on how the race went. The first start was at 6:30. Solo sailor Pip Hare fired the gun.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
And right from the off, there were plenty of notable entries, from the Giant Hull teams to the record-breaking Mod 70 power play, Greg City Academy, Classics, and new launches. And at the other end of the scale, Joe Richards' miniature racer, the 18-foot-long Eel. Fortunately, the west-going tide helped to get each fleet on their way, sliding wave after wave of competitors towards the first key point on the course, the Needles. Slipping between the lighthouse and the notorious wreck was a nerve-wracking affair, but one that paid dividends if you got it right. Along the south side of the island, the breeze built, much to the frustration of the fast boats who couldn't shake off the fleet who were concertinaing the race. After 4 hours, 11 minutes and 1 second, power play took line honours. Impressive, but way off their record pace of 2 hours 22 minutes. The Botine 52 Tala was the first monohull to finish, followed closely by Richard Matthews' Carkeek 520 Oystercatcher. But the light winds that had built during the day meant that this year was one for the small boats, and the overall win in IRC went to Joe Richards once again. Eeyore took 9 hours to get around, but won on overall corrected time. There are some people that spend their lives trying to win the Gold Roman Bowl. Joe Richards has won it twice in back-to-back events. And in the Island Sailing Club's cruiser class, it was a small boat as well that won that too, Charette. As always, the Round the Island race is full of amazing boats and stories. And thanks to some of the video that you've been sending through, we're going to be putting some more stories together later on, so watch out for them. In the meantime, stay safe, keep well, till next time.
I don't know, I think it was a terrific video, and I think
Yes.
Matt Sheehan does really a nice job, don't you think?
Absolutely.
So you were sailing in that race, Andrew, and I'm still, let's just review the facts. There were 1,200 boats and over 7,000 sailors?
Yeah, I think if it's difficult to average out because obviously there are more small boats than large boats, but it's certainly that sort of number. I mean, if you go back 15 years or so, the record numbers, there were 1,900 boats.
Wow.
But it has reduced, but it built a little bit it came back a bit this year, obviously, because it's one of the first, it got cancelled last year because of COVID, of course. But, you know, it's a lot of people were very keen to get out and do it again this year. I think we were lucky because all the forecasts for the whole week before was that there'd be no wind. And for the first couple of hours, there was absolutely no wind. We were just drifting on the fairly strong tide, creating that little tiny bit of tidal wind. But undoubtedly it's a picnic for many, but it's a serious race for others, and it's very enjoyable. And it's a challenge because the tides, the currents, the places to go aground, the places to take the advantage of the complicated tidal streams all around the island. So you're thinking all the time. And I mean, I've done it. I can remember doing the 50th anniversary race. So
And that was 40 years ago, obviously.
Yeah, I've lost count of the number of times I've been around.
Well, this sounds like a great place to run an America's Cup race around the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, indeed. They went the other way.
Yeah, true. You went out around the Needles. You go west to east, and the America's Cup back in 1851 at least started off Cowes and went around the east end and then beat up the backside, the south side of the island and around. But tell me about this boat. Whose boat is this?
They didn't have the Varvassi problem then, because the Varvassi only sank in 1948, I think. And this is the one you thread between. You go between the Needles and the wreck.
That's out at the Needles Lighthouse that Matthew was referring to.
Yeah, every year somebody hits it, and various boats have sunk. Famously, Corinne McIrvine, who's the vice president of the French Sailing Association at the moment, is sank their Admiral's Cupper on it. And a lot of people have hit it and done a lot of damage.
Well, whose boat is this?
Hold my breath. That's my boat. So that's us coming into the finish. We were quite pleased. We were 23rd boat over the line out of that lot.
Out of 1,200.
Yeah.
That's great.
And we were 7th in class. And our class was a crazy. I mean, a lot of the classes were quite close in rating and had only 20 or 30 boats. For some reason, the top class, we were grouped with a 111-footer, a couple of a TP52 and this new Oystercatcher 52 and a whole lot of other, fairly extreme race boats. And we came in 7th out of that lot. So we were pretty happy.
Who is this next to you in 4896?
Which did belong to Terry Robinson, who was a Commodore of RORC before me. And then Mickey Broughton, the navigator, had her for a while. And anyway, yeah, we came up. They were sort of reaching across the course compared with their pointing ability with those rather old sails wasn't very good. But yeah, that was in Hurst Narrows earlier.
Tell us what our audience, some of us will know, but what's the R and what's the N on the sail numbers?
Yeah, we sort of ran out of numbers, so different clubs were given. So the RYA has a whole lot of numbers. The R is a numbers issued by the Royal Ocean Racing Club. C is issued by the Clyde Scottish Club. All the other suffix letters are from the Royal Yachting Association. It's rather complicated. I won't I won't go into the details of La Réponse and 42, but it's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything is.
I think we covered that, didn't we, on the last show? That 42,
So
and that's why his boat's numbered because of the
That's why I mentioned
Hitchhiker's
the-
Guide to the right. Didn't we cover that, Julia?
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm 42.
Well, here's you at the wheel. Who's with you?
I've got Tony behind me. Has retired recently from the Royal Navy. He was a commander in the Royal Navy, second in command of one of our HMS Ocean, which was the flagship of the Navy until the two big aircraft carriers turned up. Paul in front of me is actually he's a family physician, a great friend of mine, but also an extremely good main sheet man.
Well, I guess if you're going to get hurt, that's a good boat to get hurt on.
Yes, I get.
And how about this shot?
Yeah, that was after we dropped Assuage, and that's up ahead. Was the last Commodore of the RORC in a Corby design called Crackling Rosie.
Is he in a header, or are you just pointing that much higher than he?
Yeah, this curve that I've got does point ridiculously high, it's one of its features.
What is it, a 30 something? 40?
39. It's a Kerr 39, a modified Kerr 39.
Good boy. And you said the Spooky, the new, the ex Spooky, which was Steve Benjamin's boat here in New York Yacht Club, the TP52-ish.
Yeah, and she's now Tala, and she was the first monohull run the course.
Yeah, I saw that in the video, in Matt Sheehan's video.
That Matt's film.
Okay,
yeah.
now what about this boat from Portugal? What a gorgeous machine this is.
Well, the Spirit yachts are sort of classic yachts in that they've got a modern underwater shape, but on the surface they look traditional. So they don't rate at all well, but they look extremely pretty. And I think one of the smaller ones was one of the recent James Bond films, and they do them in all sizes. And what's more, they're actually built in wood, built in Britain. Gorgeous. So she's the biggest wooden boat that's been built for decades, I think.
How big, do you know?
Yeah, 111 foot.
Wow.
Hence the number 111, I suppose, on the...
It's very long overhangs, of course. The waterline length is a lot less, so it's a sort of very conventional shape that way, although the underwater, she's still got a fin keel and separate rudder. She hasn't got a traditional underwater shape. But she's meant to be coming to do the Maxi Worlds in Sardinia.
Nice. So
I think we'll fit her in with the J class.
How about the overall winner?
The overall this line honors winner is Power Play, which is
line honors, right, first to finish.
Yeah, she's been running around getting records, and every time she gets a record, then Maserati comes along and takes it away from her. So she had the record for the Fastnet, the old course, and she had the record St. Malo. And she went, at that time, they went at the same time as Maserati almost, but Maserati just pipped them. But they do hold the record for around the island, which is a whole 2 hours less than they did this year.
Yeah, 2 hours and change from a couple of years ago, because you didn't run the race last year, right?
That's right, yeah.
So from 2019, but it was a light air, slower race, a small boat race, really, this time around. Look at the crew. I mean, this is a pretty impressive crew. I must know half of them. They are
impressive crew, actually. It's quite fun because Ned, Tom, and Frank, I've sailed with them on Sir John Peter Harrison, the late Sir Peter Harrison's Sir John. But of course, Lasso is the sort of fastest man on water. He holds the world speed record. And Miles Seddon's a great navigator. Frank I've known for a long time. He's originally South African, works for North Sails. They're fully powered up with, and Ned has been driving multi-hulls, particularly Mod 70s, for a long time. So, the boat's for sale, but they've achieved a lot with her this year.
Have you seen their video?
Yes.
Let's play it, because they produced their own video. I thought it was really very cool. Let's have a look.
We're going to do the round the island race with 1,400 other boats. talk about nearly 10,000 people out on the water. Unbelievable. I can't even see the competition. It's nice to see how these mods can do against the big boys. Testament to this boat, really. Super slick manoeuvres, lots of sail changes, kept the boat super slippery in the light, and the guys did a great job.
4 hours, 11 minutes and 1 second. But that was a nice, not record-setting pace, but they were first to finish. Any other comments on them before we go to the overall winner for the second year in a row?
Well, I should have mentioned that Peter Cunningham's about 82, I think, and he's incredible because he drives that boat. So there's hope for us all.
You think? Julia, that could be you.
It could be me.
You could be driving that boat around the island.
I think
that's
Miles Seddon took his young son, so they've got quite an age range on that. So that was impressive. I think it was great. And the important thing is they beat the old teams, the 100-foot French boats that you would have assumed would have got line honours, but they beat the two of them. So that was fantastic.
Okay, how about the corrected winners? This courtesy of sailweb.co.uk. These guys have won it now. As Matt said in his video, you go all your life hoping you can win the gold bowl, and they've won it now in the last two runnings.
Joe Richards is a very, very clever man. He's a clever designer. This is not the first tiny boat, although this is the same as the boat his father had, but this one's been pimped up. And he's had a number of other very small boats because he knows that a very small boat tends to win this. Because what happens is with around the island, the bigger boats, you go down to the Needles with the tide, but then you spend the other 3/4 of the distance against the tide. If you've got a small boat, you have the tide with you the whole way around. So it makes an enormous difference, and why a small boat, a sort of 20 to 26 foot boat, nearly always wins. But
do they schedule the race so that does the day move around so that you're always on a departing tide?
It always starts at just before high tide when the tide's turning off Cowes. Just because if you didn't start it then, the little boats would never get round at all. The Dart. It's roughly 60 miles. He's got a great track record of designing lots of things from dinghies all the way up to one of Peter Harrison's America's Cup boats. So he knows what he's about, and he's been studying ways to win around the island for a very long time, and he's finally achieved it not once but twice, which is an incredible achievement.
Okay, well, we've got a ton of questions and comments, which we'll come to because we'll wrap up this round the island race segment before we go to the COVID segment. But let me ask you one more question, if I may. Mr. Secretary General of the IMA, this thing just got splashed. This is the new Club Swan 125. What do you know about this?
Well, I've known quite a lot about it on the way on from when Juan K was talking about it, and when the Nautil Swan guys were talking about building her. I mean, it's the most incredible beast. Even they call it a beast. It's because it's a combination of canting keel and the C-foil, which is very much the same concept as the C-foil that you see on the Swan 36, but obviously huge. And it's going to be the most amazing boat, one hopes. I mean, sometimes 1K goes from sort of one extreme to the other. Sometimes the boats are absolutely brilliant, and sometimes they're not. But I think it's a very exciting project. I don't care for the paint job, but
nobody does.
I mean,
nobody does.
I imagine even Nortor aren't very keen on the paint job because it could have been made to look prettier. But no, it's an incredible project.
They have a video. There's a cool video, which I'm not going to play, that they also released just in the last 24 hours. And it shows the sea foil, which actually goes through the hull. So it goes from one side to the other. It comes up out of one side and down in the water in the other. And it's got twin rudders. And of course, it's got a big swinging, a BSD, a big swinging keel.
Rudders with the knuckles on, like a humpback whale fin. And there are loads of clever things. But boy, does it, with the canting keel, there aren't many places they can go in with the 7.5 meter draft they've got on it.
Yeah, that's what I saw on the videos, that it's a very light boat, a very, very light boat, hence the big draft.
Yeah, she's only 60 tons, so which is pretty amazing for a boat that size.
Okay, anything else in the offshore world before we move to COVID and all these? I got to go to these questions. We got so many questions and comments from folks.
Right. Nothing special. I mean, the offshore program in the UK has been curtailed somewhat. We can't go into French harbours, so we've had to move the finishes of some of the races. We still don't quite know what's going to happen with the end of the Fastnet in Cherbourg. We think that a lot of restrictions will be lifted by then with luck, and we'll be able to get back to normal. Certainly, as I'll talk about later in the COVID bit, things are changing a lot here. It depends what other countries do. But we've had very good numbers in all. I've done 2 of the offshore races this year with excellent participation. Even some of the French have come all the way. They're not allowed to land and stay in Cowes, so they come all the way across from Cherbourg, start the race with us, do the race, and then go back without stopping anywhere. And that our St. Malo race, which is one of my favorite races, where we always go in and have oysters and everything when we get there. This year, you're going to turn around on a buoy and race all the way back and not stop.
How about Fastnet?
It's 360. Well, that Fastnet finishing in Cherbourg, it may be that the French start in Cherbourg, come through the line in Cowes and go back to Cherbourg, and the British do the opposite. If they go through the line off Cherbourg and come straight back to Cowes without stopping. But at the moment, we're hoping that the restrictions may be lifted by then, and it'll be more normal.
Okay, let's go to the questions and comments, because there are a ton. Remember Doc Holliday, Alan Long is saying we're way back on the red and white striped barber pole outside of a barber shop. Because he's a barber surgeon. Yeah, okay. Back on our sparkler thing, Bill Haynes is saying, Julia, do you realize that sparklers are the most dangerous firework? They burn at an amazingly high temp, close to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, I know. I was burning the hell. I tried to hold them. That's why I stuck them finally in what do you call that? Placemat on the table, and lucky we didn't burn the placemat and the whole rest of the place down. But we're here. We're still here. We live to talk about it.
They always seem so benign, but they are.
Well, they hurt like hell.
Yeah.
I haven't played with sparklers since 40 years. I think since maybe not quite that 30 years when Meg was probably a kid. When she's almost 30 now. Question Gordon Smith is asking. Question for Andrew McIrvine. Is Andrew a member of the Worshipful Company of Barber Surgeons in the City of London? What the hell is that?
Oh yeah, it's one of the livery companies. No, actually, I'm a member of the Worshipful Society of Apothecaries, which are even older. But yeah, so we're allowed to do all sorts of strange things, like drive our sheep across London Bridge, and if you're a freeman of the City of London, rather strange things. But yes, I could have been a barber surgeon or an apothecary, but I somehow joined the apothecaries first before I was a surgeon.
Now, are you a football fan? A fan of the footy?
No, not greatly, no. I'm much keener on rugby.
And Italy, did you play rugby?
Yeah, we were forced to. I wasn't very good because at those days I'm fairly short-sighted, and if I could see a rugby ball, I was lucky. And also I was quite small till I was about 16. So, and in those days, you got flattened. So I didn't really enjoy it as a kid, but I enjoy watching it.
Well, when we were in college, there was
soccer rather dull.
Yeah, there was club soccer, and there was varsity football, American football, of course. But the rugby players, they all had T-shirts, they all had bumper stickers that said you have to have leather balls to play rugby. Is that true?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, they say that in rugby, you have all the violence is on the pitch, and you have really quite well-behaved middle-class people in the stands. And in football, it's the other way around. And I'll give you a lovely example. You know the way soccer players, if they pretend that somebody's kicked them, they roll around on the floor.
Yeah, they do a big flip. Our NBA basketball players are starting to do that too.
When you see the damage that the rugby players do to each other, and they get up and sort of flail a broken limb at somebody, and they carry on regardless. But no, the best example I can give you is that I went to the first. We have the 5 nations, which became the 6 nations every year when Italy joined in, and I went to one of the first games in Rome of Italy against England. And so we get to the stadium and we find thousands of police and water cannon because they were expecting English football.
Not rugby.
We're all there, chatting with the Italians and having a very lovely afternoon.
In the college, go ahead.
So the contrast is quite huge.
In the college town in the Midwest, in Ann Arbor, where I grew up, we had club rugby, and the fraternities and the dorms even. We had teams that we'd go follow them. But afterwards, the rugby players were famously good partiers. They all got in the same shower. Both teams got in the same shower, and they were drinking, and they were having a hot tub or whatever they're doing, and then they're going out to the bar and all carrying on and dropping their drawers and flashing the waitresses and everybody. I mean, the rugby players are just famously fun and relaxed. Hockey players, we used to try to share. You had 2 separate locker rooms, and then you'd have a common shower between them. They had to stop doing it because there were fights in the showers between the 2 opposing teams. Not the rugby players; they're much more friendly.
Yeah. No, I think the rugby players have a much better.
Yeah, well, I don't know what's going on, but Italy has scored. So there's projections. Emmett is saying Italy versus England on Sunday. The Italians are very good. I don't know if it's done yet, but there's all sorts of jokes, too, about addressing a German PhD, hair doctor, professor, and it's an excellent game. Hair doctor, Italy, Denmark.
You can
final.
be doctor in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor.
2 degrees. Yeah. But I think, considering most of my team in the IMA are Italian, it could be quite awkward. I may have to hide on Sunday.
Maura Stevens up in Canada saying, what a beautiful, I think she's in the Maritimes. What a beauty from Portugal. Wood is the proper thing. That is a gorgeous
It is. And she's right besides
God.
that. Yeah.
Great. John Emmett saying, great to see Nick Hutton. Video well made. Matthias Collins down South America saying, yes, indeed. Jonathan Frank, fantastic to have such an event that includes ships and crews from the leading edge of technology and professionalism to family cruisers. Mm-hmm. Spot on. I mean, it's a celebration of the sport. It's a celebration of fellow sailors, men and women, and great fun, eh?
Yeah, Magnus has written about it. And he'd got a little boat that he hoped would be up the front. I didn't actually see quite how he did. Magnus wrote a really good piece about, children having fun, being able to go sailing, having fun, not being driven by the sort of pushy parents.
That was his. Did you see it, Julia? Really that was his blog post today. We're of course talking about Magnus Wheatley, Magnus as we call him, as a regular on here, and that was a terrific. I don't know. I haven't seen the Seahorse. I have a digital subscription to the Seahorse, and I haven't quite popped that out yet. But who was it that wrote the One Design article that Magnus was so pleased about?
I could look it up. I can't remember who wrote it, but I read it and I thought it was very good. It basically said there are so many dinghies around that have been sort of abandoned that you can pick up really cheaply, and people should be using. But I like the bit about let's go and have fun, because I remember when I was that age sailing an international cadet, the guy who organised us, we would go on we'd go on expeditions as a fleet with a picnic, as well as the racing, and it was all just great fun. And I don't think they do that sort of thing very much anymore.
I think they do. I think we give way more attention to the kids that are got coaches, and then Magnus talked about kids who growing up sailing with people blowing whistles at them. Tack now, jibe now, do that. It's just and John Emmett will agree with us too, even though he's a super coach and Olympic coach. We'll have his report in a minute. Okay, well, good stuff and terrific race. Congratulations to all involved. David James saying a draft of 25 feet is silly. Around here, you would have to dock at the Alameda shipping dock over in the East Bay. Yeah. John Commodore McNeil, whom you know well, is saying the 12-meter Worlds are in Helsinki in August. Some very interesting boats preparing in Hamburg, in Germany. That's good, Hamburg. Spain scores, Gordon Smith said. Goal to equalize. Italy and Spain 1-1.
Yeah.
The easiest way to solve a soccer match is just do the penalty shootout and forget the bit before.
Well, that's the most exciting part, isn't it? Yeah. That's why
it wasn't for France.
It's that's why Julia will only watch the last 5 minutes of an NBA game, of a professional basketball game, because that's the only thing that really counts here. Right, Julia?
Right. I plan my time that way.
Okay, Husted says, I have a question to Andrew. Do you take kids out on the water or newcomers on your boat in your offshore sailing, formal or informal?
Yeah, I do. I take guys. We have a thing called the British Keelboat Academy, which really takes dinghy sailors offshore sailing. I take one of the races this year. I took a guy he'd been cruising, he'd never been racing, certainly offshore at night. I try and mix and match. I also take girls even.
Girls?
Yeah. Ladies. In fact, one of my most regular crew is the lady I was speaking of from Michigan, who now lives in
Michigan.
In London. Yeah.
Women from Michigan. Did you see one of the sports? One of the Olympic sports I just saw on Inside the Games this morning when I was researching to see if there was have gone from using ladies to women, or maybe to them, because you can't call them women anymore. I mean, it's just croutonic.
It all gets really confusing. Yes, I mean, don't let's get into that. It's just
no, let's not.
Yeah.
Andrew, tell us about your mascot on the boat. Commodore McNeil is asking.
Oh yeah, that was somebody's teddy bear a while ago. He doesn't sail with me, so the teddy bear's gone.
Oh, that's too bad. But McNeil seems to know
he's
about
moved
that.
John he moved to Ireland.
He seems to know about that. Pedro Foiling Sailor, a.k.a. Peter Stevenson down in Australia, Sydney. 13 St. George Rugby League players down under just fined over $350,000 for partying while in lockdown. They also shower together and keep dropping the soap.
I don't think we better
Julia, you got to shake your finger right up at your camera.
I did
right at him.
I may have to have a small.
It calls for a glass, Julia. I may have to go fix us a cocktail here too.
I read it a while ago, and I thought I'm not going to do that.
You were skipping that comment. How's your new computer working out over there? With your comments,
it's big.
It is big. It's a 27. That's the old 27-inch that we used to stream the show on.
Yeah.
I'm in front of one of those too.
Yeah, nice.
David James saying junior sailing unfortunately now consists of 8 hours of windward lure races and opties. Preposterous.
Yeah.
I think we all agree with that.
Absolutely.
I mean, we had a ball in junior sailing, and we had one. I mean, it was just our little tiny lake, and we had a great instructor who was a pretty good sailor himself. He's a few years older than we. Lived on the lake, and we when we were done doing with the more advanced kids doing what we were supposed to do, and then he was teaching docking or hoisting sails or something. We'd go up into them. My mother's watching. She's never heard this story. We would then run up into their cottage, the older kids, and we'd read this guy's Playboy magazines. He didn't know it. We'd go up there, find his play. And junior sailing was great.
Yeah.
We learned a lot in junior sailing. A lot in junior sailing.
Well, for some reason, at the Royal Leamington Yacht Club, they used to let us drink half pints of cider as if they weren't alcoholic, and we were about 14. So usually by the afternoon, we were quite merry.
This fermented cider.
Yeah.
Yeah, proper cider.
Proper
cider.
It was sort of regarded as not really alcoholic, but it was.
But don't tell Mom.
Ed Worley is saying, Ed, kids should be on small boats, but also sail on larger boats to learn work together as a crew. Absolutely. We all keep saying that. Okay.
Well, that's why the cadet was very good, because it had a jib and a spinnaker and a crew, and you learnt a lot more than you would in an opti. I would, but I'm biased.
And Julie, you see this Tom Herbert Evans, who we've got to get on here. Tom, I think, is still in charge of, what's that program called? The Endeavor program for Sail GP. Tom, if you are, drop us a comment. I'd love to get you on as we get closer to, what's the next Sail GP is the 17th and 18th, I think, in Plymouth.
Yeah.
In the UK. Tom Herbert Evans, certainly a fine balance between fun and safety. Sometimes the whistleblower has a few things to prioritize, which can affect the takeaway of the student and sailors get. Well, I think programs like the Endeavor program that Sail GP are doing and others are terrific, and by all means, let's hope that continues in our sport. And yeah, we want kids to race. We want racing to go on, right? We want kids to learn to race. I mean, I think the national authorities, in fact, almost spend too much time worrying about all this other training stuff. They should focus on racing and then let the clubs run everything else. But then I'm a dinosaur.
But 80% of those opti kids give up sailing forever.
Yes, early.
Yeah, I saw that, and we know that, of course, here in the U.S., we know that all over the world, and there's a whole lot of distractions, but we do have to deal with that. And Magnus wrote beautifully about that in his column, in his blog post today, and exactly. And it's like my daughter Meg, who's, she grew up not exactly on the water because we were in Germany and then in Spain, but she had access to the water. We sailed. She sails. She knows how to sail. She's now head of the J flags at San Diego Yacht Club, and she sails on Friday nights, and she sails in the J105 with the Commodore. Mm-hmm. But is she going to own a boat like we all did at her age, at late 20s and 30s? No, because she is, just as Magnus said, trying to save the money to buy. She bought a car now. She's got her boyfriend. They're thinking about getting married. They go on a vacation. She surfs. She surfs online. She, got a job. She's got all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Okay, I digress.
No,
any comments on all that?
No, I mean, I agree with all that. I think it's much more difficult. People in their sort of late 20s, early 30s trying to build a career, buy a house, all those things are much more difficult than it was.
Yeah, but let's get those kids on boats. Let's invite them sailing and get them out with people. And that's what we do on our boat with Andy Rose and the gang down in Newport Beach, down in Balboa.
Well, the other thing is most of my friends who I sail with are too old to go in front of the mast now. So we have to recruit some young
kids.
And they mesh in very well. I mean, I don't have any professionals on board, but we have an age range from 20, 21 up to 70. So which is, I think, very healthy. And we all go out
you're too young. Some of us don't go forward to the wheels because it's unhealthy. Forget about going forward. I won't let my
crew comment on that because they say I'm Velcroed onto the wheel.
Yeah, well, you're on the boat. So, Bill Wingrove, what was Wingrove's pre-show comment? Something about we're going to have a Zoom cocktail party for the hurricane passing up the west coast of Florida or something. Right. What's that? Elisa? What's the name of that hurricane? I can't remember. Elsa. I have a thing at the end of the show. Jody Shields, my first job on a yacht was when I was 15. I had to be the top of the beer. I had to open, I guess, the top of the beer, then fill it up with ginger, with green ginger. Yeah. And that's fine, and you can pass sandwiches up, and you learn how to grind a winch. Then you learn how to do other stuff as you go along. Good stuff. McNeil says that's why club fleets are important to the youth. Yes,
absolutely.
With bigger boats, not just opties. Yeah. And let's press on, because the next segment here is a lead-in, believe it or not, to Andrew's next topic, which, of course, is COVID. This day in history, and we'll see if our esteemed guest and if Julia know what happened on this day in history in 1885. So this is fully 35 years, 34 years after AC 0, after 1851. And it was only then that things in the modern medical establishment were starting really to pick up pace. Who is this? This is your first and only clue. Who is this? Andrew, do you know?
Is it Pasteur?
Well done. Julia, do you recognize?
I didn't.
Louis Pasteur.
Louis Pasteur.
Yes.
1822 to 1895. And why is he famous?
He invented pasteurization to stop you getting tuberculosis out of milk.
He's known for his discoveries of the principles of vaccination, microbial fermentation, and food prep. The food prep process known, as you just said, Doctor, pasteurization. So let's carry on here. And what did he do on this day? Well, he produced the first vaccine, which was for rabies. So they were messing around with other stuff, but this was the first human vaccine, apparently, according to all sorts of sources this morning, last night when I put this together. And it was a virus. He grew it as a virus in rabbits, and then weakening it by drying the affected nerve tissue, and on down. And then the vaccine was used on 9-year-old Joseph Meister on July 6th, 1885, after the boy was badly mauled by a rabid dog. Now, this was done at personal risk for Pasteur, since he was not a licensed physician and could have faced prosecution for treating the boy. He was not a mister, Andrew.
No.
He was whatever he was. But the long story short, the kid lived. Pasteur was the last couple sentences, was hailed as a hero, and legal matter was not pursued. Analysis of his laboratory notebooks after the fact shows that Pasteur had treated 2 people before his vaccination of Meister. So he did do some live trials before the boy. And that was on this day in history. Pasteur's rabies jab saves the boy's life on July the 6th in the 1885, did I say? I've forgotten now. Yeah. Speaking of which, let's move to COVID.
It's a difficult inoculation even now, and it's
rabies.
You have to get it into people. Yeah, you have to get it into people really quick. It's not entirely effective. Of course, I mean, sorry to correct you, but vaccination goes back to smallpox long before that. So, you can go back quite a long way.
Well, but not according to Wikipedia, not according to this day in history. That's all I can do. When was the first when was the first smallpox vaccine?
Well, it was actually a lady who was a British lady who discovered that they were doing it in Turkey and brought it back to England. But then it was Edward Jenner who took cowpox from. They found that milkmaids didn't get smallpox.
I remember that.
And if you could inoculate somebody with cowpox, and you remember, I mean, we're a generation who had smallpox vaccination, and it wasn't an injection. They actually scratched the skin and then rubbed the vaccine into the scratches.
Julia,
that's why you get a funny scar.
I do.
I've got one, but I think it is the only germ that has been totally eradicated from the world, although it's probably hiding in some Ministry of Defense labs somewhere, but
hopefully not in China.
It has been eradicated from the world.
Smallpox.
Yes, definitely. Hopefully not in China. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so smallpox was the first vaccine ahead of
rabies. Yeah.
Oh well, I'm sorry I got that wrong, but that's what that was all over the various sites today. Big deal.
I thought smallpox was too. Yeah.
Okay, but let's move on to COVID. Thank you for that, Andrew. Here was the first thing I asked you about. I sent a couple of we weren't winging this. We did not have time for a pre-show and a rehearsal, so Andrew's just going to react to these slides. Pfizer vaccine protection against infection declines to 64% in Israel, according to Fox News and many other outlets this morning. Andrew?
Yeah, well, I think one of the problems is that has become a sort of assumption in the world that the vaccines would produce 100% effectiveness in terms of not getting the disease and not transmitting it, which was never really expected. If you go back to the early, the Oxford group, for instance, Sir John Bell, who said quite clearly when they first were launching the vaccine that he didn't expect it to prevent disease. He expected it to prevent severe disease and death, but it wouldn't stop people necessarily getting the disease completely. And that's really what's happened. And if you look at all the series that are coming through, we are getting groups of people who've been double vaccinated who are getting the disease, but they aren't getting it badly and they aren't dying. And that's really the fundamental change. Now, I can tell you of some gentlemen at a famous yacht club very close to my right shoulder who had a dinner down in Cornwall, and some of the serving staff were found the next day to have to test positive when they did the routine testing. And a number of those gentlemen, all of whom had been doubly vaccinated, either had symptoms or were tested positive within the next week.
And they were all double vaccinated.
And they were all double vaccinated. And I'm afraid this is going to happen. But the good news is that they will have a flu-like illness, but they won't end up in hospital and they won't die. What's happening in Israel is although they've had a lot of mass vaccination, they hadn't done that many young people. And the vast majority of the people who are getting COVID now are the unvaccinated or the people who've only had one vaccination. And that's why in the UK we're speeding up the vaccination program. We're taking the vaccination gap from 12 weeks to 8 weeks. It was really only 12 weeks to try and get the majority of people at least to have the first vaccination.
Well, a couple weeks ago, I contacted you and I said, I have a friend.
Yeah.
I said,
I remember the friend. Yeah.
I texted him about 4 a.m. and I said, I have a friend who has these new symptoms, or they're not new symptoms, but the hierarchy of the symptoms, headache and runny nose and so on. And this friend has been double vaccinated since months ago, is exhibiting these symptoms and feels like crap. What should I tell him to do? And you said, go get a test. Well, that friend, as everybody on here knows, has gone and had 2 tests in the meantime. Both, I did get a second test, by the way, and both tested negative. But now I'm reading that it is possible that you can be double vaxxed, get the breakthrough COVID, exhibit symptoms, but still test negative, and hopefully, they think, not be shedding the virus. Is that true, or is that Crutonic? Correct or Crutonic?
No, I think that's true. I mean, it depends on the test you use. The lateral flow test is verging on useless in terms of it's really only usually positive if you have quite severe symptoms and you're shedding a lot of virus. The LAMP test or the PCR tests are the sort of gold standard, and they rarely have false positives or false negatives.
Okay, so let's just, Professor, help us with that, because I didn't know any of this. The first test I got was the lateral flow, which is it was well up into the nose. It made your eyes water, but then it's 15 or 20 minute turnaround. That one you say returns 30 or 40% false positives or negatives.
False negatives, yeah.
False negatives.
I mean, we're handing those out like Smarties all over. You can pick them out anywhere. You can send an email and they'll send you a box the next day. We're mass testing all our school kids. The latest I heard was because the school kids are being sent home if they test positive and their whole class has to go home with them. They've discovered that tipping lemon juice onto the test lateral flow will make it go positive, and then I have to get out of school.
I get to go home, Mommy and Daddy. I got to go home.
Anyway, that's the rumor I hear.
Okay, so the other 2 tests are the LAMP and the PCR. They're different tests, but you say they're both quite good.
They essentially do the same thing. Yeah, they multiply the they find trace of the virus, they tend to be positive even when the virus is probably inactivated. And so you may test positive way beyond the time when you're actually infectious. So that there was people felt that we were finding too many false positives that way. They weren't truly false positives. Those people had the infection, but they may not have had any symptoms.
Okay.
But that is the accurate test. And different countries are wanting you to have a PCR test. Some, like Italy, were happy with a lateral flow test. But really, I think the lateral flow test the thing about it is it's dirt cheap and easy to do, and you can do it yourself.
The lateral
PCR
flow.
Test. That's what. Yeah, the PCR.
Yeah, because
test
Emmett says you can ask for. They send you 7 tests in the mail. He says, and this is
exactly. Yeah.
okay.
And I got my crew before we went offshore. I got my crew to test themselves so that if we were going down below overnight, theoretically we knew we weren't carrying the infection. Unfortunately, I also knew that it wasn't that accurate, but it was a gesture, and I think that's why it's easy to do. To do the PCR test or the lamp test, you can actually take the box, and we were thinking of doing it with RORC for the 600 before we cancelled it. You can actually take a box down to a sailing club or a marina, and you can do 48 cases at a time. The actual box of tricks is quite expensive, but it's not that difficult to run once you've got it. PCR has to go back to a centralized lab, which means in most cases it takes between 12 and 24 hours to get the result.
Okay, what about this headline this morning?
Yeah, well, that again, it depends on who you want to pick. The World Health Organization has labeled Lambda as a variant of interest, and that is one grade down from a variant of concern. It's popped up mainly in South America, but there are a few cases in Europe. Whether it's more transmissible, whether it's more infectious, whether it's more lethal, nobody knows yet because there aren't enough. One of the things in the UK is we do more genomic testing than almost anywhere else in the world. So the trouble is we pick up that we've got loads. We did pick up that we've got loads of Delta variant, and a lot of places in Europe thought they hadn't got any because they weren't doing that test. Now they realize, remember a couple of weeks ago, Mutti Merkel wanted to stop all Brits going anywhere in Europe.
Yep.
And then now they've backed off because they've discovered that most of the new cases that they've got in Germany are also from the Delta variant, and the Delta variant is all over Europe.
Yeah, this Lambda apparently came out of Peru. We'll ask Matthias Collins to keep track of that for us. This was at the Cannes Film Festival, which is just opening, and this was another test I wanted to ask you about. Cannes launches with COVID confusion and disgusting saliva tests that require festival goers to spit in a tube.
Well,
what's that about, Andrew?
It's basically a lateral flow test. So it's a way of doing the lateral flow test, and it's been around for months and months that you could do it that way rather than sticking a swab up your nose or down the back of your throat. It's just another way of picking up the virus. So it's not any more disgusting, particularly than what we're doing already with swabs.
It sounds pretty disgusting. Well, I guess not.
Well, it's not. What are you getting down the back of your throat? You're getting saliva and gunk and snot out of that. So
I'm getting coffee down the back of mine.
Mark Husted says, "What's Andrew's thought about Boris saying stuff it? We're free over the summer, but being locked up in October?"
Yeah, your Freedom Day. Let me come to that in just a sec, because we're going to get into the UK now. And I saw Husted's question. Thank you, Julia, for that. And this is the headline again today. This was in USA Today, and of course, your Crown Prince. He's not Crown Prince, but he's the king apparent after Charles, right? This is William, and England sticks to the plan for lifting restrictions on Freedom Day. Forget about the fake vaccines in India, but apparently, he tested positive in the spring and they kept it secret. Why would they do that?
I don't know, because his father tested positive, and that was all.
So that was last summer,
actually
right?
Had the disease. Yeah. So I've no idea why they would want to hide it. I hadn't heard that. I'd only heard the bit that Kate had been in contact at Wimbledon or somewhere, and therefore she was isolating and not.
Yeah, she went into self-isolation apparently.
But I hadn't heard that William had it. I don't know whether that's just
maybe it's tabloid reporting. But I saw that again this morning, and I was sucking up all these factoids so we could ask you some questions. I got some more. Now, this is one of your slides. Tell us about, and then we'll talk about Bojo, Boris Johnson, and answer Mark Husted's question.
Yeah, well, this really shows what is shown here is that you would think, and of course, there are a lot of frightened people in the UK, including my wife, who was shielding because she's high risk. And you look at this graph and you compare last October, November, and January, and then you look at now and you think, God, it's just as bad. It's just as bad or worse, and we're into the third wave, and it's all terrible. Then you look at the next slide. If that'll go up. And this is the difference. Look at the number of people who are going into hospital in the winter, and you look at the number of people going into hospital now. And if you look at a similar graph with deaths, then it's almost a flat line. There's virtually no increase in deaths. And this, we think, is the reason, and that is because we've got all these people vaccinated. You know, I've been vaccinating. I've been a volunteer vaccinating myself. Our only problem now in London, which has the lowest vaccination rate, it's partly because we have a younger population than the rest of the country. We also have a very multi-ethnic population, and some of the social media in some of the ethnicities has been very anti-vax. And we've even had some of our outreach vaccination teams virtually attacked by anti-vaxxers. So unfortunately, you know, they do live amongst us, these people, and by getting this vaccination numbers up, we're virtually we're the best in Europe, other than Malta. But there's only, as you know, Malta's a tiny place, so it's quite easy to vaccinate everybody, and Gibraltar's another. But we've done very well with the vaccination, and we've now cut our hospitalization rate and our death rate right back, although our overall case rate looks terrible. We're getting 25,000 a day, and according to the latest Minister of Health, the last Minister of Health, you all know, left under a bit of a cloud because he was found groping one of his staff when he was meant to be socially distanced, and it was all filmed. So it's been the cause of
it's the film.
Many jokes. Yeah.
Huh?
And anyway, what's happening?
He was. Come on, he wasn't socially. He was supposed to. Everybody was under lockdown, and he was over there carrying on with his girlfriend at her apartment.
He was all holier than thou about one of the chap called Neil Ferguson. It was one of the guys who's still on the committee doing all the modelling from Imperial, and he was caught going away to meet his girlfriend. And there's Hancock being all holier than thou about it, and then he's caught doing exactly the same thing, or worse. But
Julia can tell you about a governor here.
Yeah,
our governor here in the state of California who got caught in a similar situation.
Yeah, well,
is this Andrew? Let me cut to the quick. Is this the bottom line?
The bottom line is, yeah. I mean, I think this is absolutely right. COVID won't go away. It's going to be like flu. It'll keep coming back, and also, stop worrying about Delta, Lambda, Kappa, Epsilon, because they're going to keep coming as well. As long as it doesn't break out to a point where the vaccines are totally ineffective and it's still very lethal. Now, flu's pretty lethal, but the vaccines are actually rubbish mostly. I mean, I didn't used to bother to take the flu vaccine because you knew that it was less than 50% effective, and it was only good for last year's mutation, not this year's. I think that the miraculous thing about the COVID vaccines is how effective they are. They're dramatically more effective than flu vaccine. So, and it looks like they can tweak them so that as the what they designed them to hit mutates out of cover. And I mean, nearly all the vaccines that have been delivered have been to attack the spike proteins. But if the spike proteins change enough, they could get out of being effective, and the antibodies wouldn't be effective.
Well, you actually went to work yesterday or today, right? First time that you were back in hospital doing a proper consultation?
That's right, yeah. Well, it dawned upon me slightly. I mean, I've been vaccinating people furiously, so I've been out seeing people. And we've been running all our clinics as telephone clinics, or nearly all of them. And although I'm essentially retired, I've been helping out, and I said I would be happy to go back doing face-to-face clinics, which I did today.
Well, the news tomorrow, Wednesday, is that Wimbledon, this from InsideTheGames.biz, that the All England Lawn Tennis Club has confirmed that the show courts, at least the 2 show courts at Wimbledon, will be full capacity from the quarterfinal stage, which starts, I believe, tomorrow. And that was that followed the successful staging the first week of the event in accordance with the UK government's distancing, or 50%. I can't remember what it all is, but center court and court 1 operator, 50% capacity during the first week. Full.
I guess if they don't close the roof,
you leave the roof open so that the COVID can go out.
Yeah.
Who's going to win? You got one of the oldest guys ever to get to the quarters, right? Who's going to win? Do you follow tennis?
I do a bit. I love Roger Federer. I think he's fantastic. I'd be very happy for him to win. Yeah.
Serious question here from Stingray. Does Dr. Andrew think mRNA has potential for follow-on treatments of different ailments? In other words, are we learning stuff here that's going to go?
Yeah, they're talking about being able to steer it towards oncology, anti-cancer treatments, all sorts of other infectious diseases, malaria. There are certainly possibilities. It's a new technology that certainly has immense possibilities. I think it's fascinating. It's a brilliant advance, in my view.
Okay, now I want to. Husted is bugging us, Julie, to go back to his original question. Was that? Let me get to that now, which is, what's Andrew's thoughts about Boris saying "stuff it"? We are free over the summer, but being locked up in October. What's going on in your neck of the woods now?
Well, I think he is. I think he's taking a gamble. I mean, we are all guinea pigs in this. This is a big gamble. We are
by opening up.
Yeah. Well, we don't really know. I mean, if you look at Italy at the moment, they've only got sort of 500 cases, but about the same number of deaths as we've got. We've got 25,000 cases and a very low death rate. Now, the question is, if we let, as Javid says, the new health minister, we let it go up to 100,000, which it could easily, because it's doubling at quite a speed and these things go exponential. Will we then get a lot more deaths, and will we then have to backtrack? Or will the gamble be that we're hitting the summer, what the English call the summer, which you won't really recognize, cold, wet, and rain. And
Emmett's been complaining about your lack of summer.
Yeah, we've had an absolutely terrible couple of days. So what they're hoping is that this will sort of settle down over the summer. And then when it comes back in the winter, we'll be even more prepared. Even more people will be vaccinated. The vaccines will still be working. And people will go on getting COVID, but they won't get that ill and they'll get over it.
Okay, well, I hope that answers Mark Husted's question, but I want to come back to hold that thought for a sec, Doctor. I want to play a video, just a clip from our favorite Dr. John Campbell, who's now got over 1 million subscriptions on his YouTube channel. Let me play this guy, what he said, which was, I thought in his report today was very interesting indeed, and then we'll get your reaction.
If I'm exposed, I'm likely to have asymptomatic infection. Could spread it to other people potentially.
He's vaccinated.
Asymptomatic. If I'm symptomatic, it's likely the symptoms are going to be headache, runny nose, sore throat, sneezing, as opposed to being very ill in terms of probability. There's no guarantee here. There's no guarantee I won't be hospitalised. There's no guarantee I won't die. It's just way, 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 way less likely. But of course, that means if I'm reinfected, it's just like a a booster dose of the vaccine. It's just like giving me a booster dose. So that means I would have been sensitized to the primer dose of my vaccine, reinforced by my booster dose of vaccine, and every time I'm exposed to the virus, I'm getting a booster dose. And that will be putting the immunity in the country up and up. So they haven't said that, but that does appear to be the strategy. Now, from this, you could even argue, and I'm not arguing this, but you could even argue that it would be a good thing if there was a higher prevalence of the virus, providing most people were doubly vaccinated, because that's going to further boost immunity. You could argue that. I'm not arguing that, but that could be argued.
Okay, so what do you think of that? That's Dr. John Campbell, who's saying, yeah, bring it on, although I don't think he's in favor of it, but he says that seems to be what Bojo's strategy is.
Yes, he does look a little bit doubtful about it. And
what do you think?
It's experiment. Well, and the other end of the spectrum is the other thing that we talked about, was the guy who says the more people you vaccinate or half vaccinate, you promote the chance of the virus having a chance to build, you encourage it to build resistant variants to the existing vaccines, which is, again, a perfectly reasonable theory. The only problem is it was propagated by a very sort of one of these characters who makes money telling you to do funny investments and things. So that slightly put me off. But there is a scientific argument that could be investigated. And all these things are experiments. Nobody knows really what's going to happen. The most interesting thing, can I just digress slightly? Because I think John Campbell has highlighted something that I was absolutely fascinated by, which I think could well be absolutely true. And you know all the fuss about the AZ vaccine and the clotting problem that it's generated. Well, there's a very, very thorough paper from Germany where they've tried it in vitro, in glass, but also in mice. And there's previous evidence. And that is that when we stick a needle into somebody, the old teaching was always that you drew back on the syringe to make sure you weren't in a blood vessel.
Yep.
And then you gave the injection. And because we put these injections into the deltoid muscle here, which basically doesn't have any big blood vessels around it, but there's still a chance if you're very, very unlucky, say something like 1 in 100,000, you could inject the vaccine directly into a blood vessel. And what they found is that, again, that the incidence of this problem with clotting is about 1 in 100,000. So that if you inject the vaccine directly into the system, then you produce the blood clotting problem. So it may be that the way you administer it may be causing the problem. And it's interesting because they've done the tests with the AZ vaccine and the Johnson vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine. And it doesn't happen with the mRNA vaccines. It only happens with the viral vector vaccines. So that could explain the whole clotting problem. And I think for me, that's fascinating.
Well, and Gordon, you see that comment.
My next injections, AZs, I'm pulling back first.
Well, doesn't everybody? That's common practice here in the U.S. Gordon Smith is saying it's aspirating a standard practice in Denmark. Isn't it common practice everywhere?
Used to be.
In the new, both the CDC in America and the NHS in England no longer teach that.
Really?
Absolutely right. Yeah, I've checked it.
Oh,
and John Campbell also reported that.
Well, he's, of course, a nursing professor. He's not a medical doctor, but he is a long time nurse and nursing trainer, and he's got a huge following on YouTube because
he's wonderful. I mean, I think he's a great guy because he's just he tells things in such a clear, simple way. He analyzes things. I may not agree with him on everything, but he is actually very good.
Yeah, and he's got as far as I can tell, he's got the biggest following on YouTube.
Yeah, and he's very dedicated because he puts these things out damn near every day.
And sometimes more than once.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, you're dedicated to do it twice a week. Well,
yeah, that's right. That's about all we can do. And I keep saying, Julia, we got to cut this back to just, to once a week. This is too much work. But he is amazing, and he also, I mean, the secret to his success, like ours, is that it's live. He writes some papers out. He does some preparation. I mean, if you're going to be live, you got to do a lot of prep. If you're going to do like Matt Sheehan's YouTube videos, you can do it all in post production. which is nice to be able to do it after the fact, and you can fix all your mistakes. And of course, we make plenty of mistakes on here. But okay, one last question, and then we'll leave COVID. Julia?
There have been a couple questions about what happens if you mix the vaccines. You take one
good question.
And then another one.
What's the latest? Because we're seeing some don't mix JJ with the others. What's the latest?
Well, the latest is that, particularly in Europe, because they got frightened with the AZ vaccine, there were a lot of, for instance, in Italy, if you had AZ as your first dose, they won't let you have another dose. And in France, it's difficult. So you're then offered Pfizer or Moderna. There's a study in Spain that came out and found that if you had a mixture of vaccines, you had a 7-fold increase in antibody production. So that it seems actually to be quite a useful thing.
But a mixture of which ones?
A mixture of AZ and Pfizer.
Oh, really?
But what they're thinking in Britain, where we're thinking of if the vulnerable need a booster injection this autumn, that if they've had AZ, they'll be given the mRNA vaccine as their booster, and vice versa. So that there's pretty good belief that mixing the vaccines is actually beneficial.
Mm. Yeah, we've seen that up here in a couple of press reports, but let's follow that and get you back on for a follow-up. Have you seen this? This is the last thing we'll do on COVID, unless any of you have more questions. I see Matthias Collins says, I'm not sure, where's USD, yes. Matthias? Have you seen, you trained as well in the UK and South Africa, but you also trained at Harvard. This came out of MIT's news.mit.edu yesterday. And this, by the way, also was forwarded by Ted Ryman. Thank you, Ted, down in Cape Town. That MIT and Harvard had teamed up for a face mask that has stuff in it that does a 90-minute COVID test. You strap this thing on, it blows a little squirt of something, water, into your system, and then it tests you for COVID, and apparently highly reliably. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't. No, that's interesting.
Well, see, the University of Sailing Illustrated here.
Yeah, that's very good. Well, perhaps it's a lateral flow type test. I don't know. That would be the easiest thing to do.
I don't know. There's quite go to the MIT.edu site. You'll see there's quite a long bit on it.
I'll look it up.
See what you think.
I wondered whether that was that sort of crystal thing on the outside, whether it turned a funny color if you were positive, and so people could run in the other direction.
I don't know. It looks like Star Wars, a communicator to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
It looks a fairly standard face mask.
Doctor, it's 22:23 there in London. What's that? Hold that up again.
That's my face mask.
Is that your KN95 or is that an N95?
I was bought in. No, it's not the top of the range. But it's not the bottom of the range. It's a sort of halfway. It's an FFP2. If you want, on the European CE marks. My AirPods are falling out. Yeah, so it's quite it's better than just the thin paper ones, and most of the cloth ones, if they haven't got a bit of filter in between, are relatively useless. But they're all really to stop you spreading your germs to other people. Exactly. They're not very effective. I mean, I tell you what came out of what I call the University of the Bleeding Obvious this week, which was that a hospital discovered that if they put all their staff in full PPE protection, they lowered the cross-infection rate in the hospital. I mean, it's sort of obvious.
Say that again?
Well, instead of mostly, you're only wearing the full FFP masks for aerosol-producing events. So if you're sticking a tube or something into somebody, or you're doing anything over an infected patient where they're breathing and could spread aerosol droplets at you, then you wear full protection. But they found if they put people in those full protection masks walking around the hospital doing everything else, they reduced their infection rate.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have thought you needed to really think about that very hard.
I guess not. Okay. Andrew, as you've been a trooper, anything else before we let you go? It's 10:30 there in London.
No, I'm just praying that we are allowed to go on sailing through this summer. And so far, I've managed to do quite a lot, and I've got a lot more planned. So,
Thanks for your comment and great photos with your.
I was around the island. Yes. Well, I'm glad I was able to put that. The only thing we did put was my poor friend John Brim's old boat, Hard Aground.
Oh.
I thought I had that in actually. I thought I saw it. Was that at the Needles?
I did tell him.
Yes.
No, that was off just in the bay just before St. Catherine's, which has got a lot of isolated rocks that aren't really marked on the charts. And that boat's draws quite a lot. But they were good and stuck. And it was low tide.
Now, Pedro Foiling Sailor calls us the University of Sailing Illustrated, and Clark Chapin loves the University of the Bleeding Obvious. Mark Husted still's got some questions. Mark, text DM, direct message, the good doctor, and Mark's who's in Sweden. You're all more or less on the same time zone, an hour apart, and Mark's a terrific guy. So if you get a question from him, Andrew, you can find Andrew on Facebook and send him your questions because they're somewhat involved. Matthias Collins, thank you for that. His parents have been double vaxxed, apparently with Sinopharm in the USA, Sinopharm and Pfizer. Not sure I'd put the Russian vaccine or the Sinopharm in me, but whatever.
Yeah.
Sinopharm's been pretty worrying in Seychelles and South America in that it's obviously not terribly effective.
Indeed. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew McIrvine, great, obviously a Brit and former admiral of the RORC secretary. Oh, I know what I wanted to do before we let you go. I wanted to thank you very much indeed for the 2021 yearbook. It's nice to see what you can do with organizations that have some money, but it is a terrific yearbook. And I think it's
at least it's not a work of fiction like last year. Last year's was all about regattas that never happened.
I mean, you all have seen books like this, but it's a coffee table book with fabulous photos. And I commend. Do you sell these? How does one get one if you're not a friend of yours?
You have to be a member or a friend of mine. Nearly all the pictures are Carlo Bolenghi, who is, as you know, the most fantastic photographer.
Is there anybody better than Carlo? I mean, we have a lot of great photography friends, but Carlo is certainly among the best.
Carlo is amazing. Yeah,
he is indeed.
In fact, we do at most of the Maxi events, we have a stack of these to hand out to the people. So there are a few around still. The print run was, I think, about 800. So they go to.
I'm not laughing.
They go to all.
Go ahead.
They go to all the members, all the other Maxi owners who are interested in becoming, or we're interested in trying to get them to join, and all the yacht clubs that we are associated with, all the events we're associated with, and obviously the presidents and commodores, and so it ends up being quite a lot of people. But they're expensively produced. They aren't.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You've become one of our regular and most popular guests, and we appreciate your coming on, especially late in your evening, Tuesday evening.
Well, thank you. All right, nice to see you.
Okay, take good care. Ciao.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Bye. Andrew McIrvine, live from London, live via Skype, and we appreciate him coming on. Obviously, a medical doctor of considerable repute, a British surgeon, and so on. And we appreciate, again, that very much. Let's go to our Olympic segment, and John Emmett will give his report. I sent this to him. I posted it on my Facebook page a couple days ago, and I said, one hears that there are containers of Olympic-class yachts that are running 30-plus days late, and efforts to charter substitute boats already on the Enoshima venue that will not be used in the games is proving difficult, if not impossible. Come on, World Sailing, step up. Well, I'm not sure that was a fair comment, because I'm not sure there's a lot World Sailing can do about it, but we've looked into this. I've talked to Andrew Pindar a little bit about it, who's, of course, a shipping expert, and a couple others who confirmed that is the case, including John Emmett, who you'll hear in his video report in a moment. This from CNBC, Lori Ann LaRocco, who's written some books about shipping, apparently CNBC business correspondent. We're all connected, so if one major port goes down, it literally impacts the whole sum of all the parts. Brad Howard, who's a producer at CNBC, says the Ever Given the Ever Given, wasn't it the Evergreen, whatever it was, Ever Given, which clogged up the super important Suez Canal back in March, was the canary in the coal mine for recent global trade slowdowns. But before this calamity, disruptions from the COVID-19 pandemic hit port after port, with the aftershocks hitting the consumer market. And Gene Soroka, who's the executive director of our port of LA, one of the largest in the world down south, 90%, he says, of world trade moves on water. And if you're wondering why stuff on Amazon and stuff in your grocery store and stuff everywhere else is slowed down, and Olympic yachts in containers, Olympic sailboats headed to Enoshima, some of them are not going to make it, as Emmett said. That previous report, courtesy of Brad Howard at CNBC.com. Speaking of John, let's go have a listen to his latest video he sent just before we went to air.
I'm John Emmett and I'm recording from sunny Weymouth, and I can really say that today. The sun is shining and it's a glorious day. Originally was going to be recording at Castle Cove Sailing Club, my home sailing club in Weymouth, which is very close to Portland, where we have the Weymouth and Portland National Sailing Academy. Although today it's so windy, there's no sailing. But that's what makes Portland and Weymouth such a good sailing venue, that we actually lose more days through too much wind rather than not enough. And club sailing, we tend to have racing nearly every day of the week, and I think that's what's so important, to look after the new people to the class and to just get as many people out on the water as possible. For those people who don't know, the reason it's such a good venue is you have the Portland Island with the prevailing wind direction from the southwesterly squeezes the wind between the mainland and the island, and it's not dissimilar to Enoshima. So Enoshima is an island connected by the causeway to the mainland, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the Olympic report. Today's focus was very much going to be about the sailing clubs and what they do for their members. So Castle Cove, we have cadets on a Friday and we have ladies sailing on a Saturday, and the big racing day is the Sunday. In fact, we just finished the Weymouth Combined Clubs dinghy regatta, and we had over 100 boats on Saturday out of Weymouth Bay. On Sunday we had them inside Portland Harbour because it was a little bit windier. And for me, one of the nicest things is the evening racing. So we have Mondays and Wednesdays, and after that people stay, and now we can do this with the easing of restrictions, have a beer and have something to eat. We have several clubs in Weymouth, and Weymouth Sailing Club have theirs on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So yeah, people can do as much sailing as they really want. The Academy tends to be full of the British sailing team, who are now packing, ready to fly out on the 9th. That's Friday, 9th of July, although the support teams have been there for quite some time. But going away from the Olympics, and somebody who hasn't done a lot of sailing recently but is now back and found a love of sailing, I'd like to talk to Lily about her new ventures. Hello, Lily.
Hello, John. Hello to all the friends from Sailing Illustrated show. Nice to see you all again.
So you had a big break after 2016 Olympics. We're not talking days, weeks, months. We're talking years because of some shoulder injuries. You've been able to get back on the water recently. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I had my shoulder operation in 2017, and then in the next 3-4 years I was still having some sort of pain which stopped me from sailing even in small dinghies. And then last summer I tried 4.7, but only one session I went back and sleep on the bed with some pain again. So that's it for me from last year. And then this year I actually feel even better, and then gradually recovering from all my shoulder activities, and I'm doing all the exercises in the gym and rehab. And now the summer is coming, and I'm trying to think whether there's any option for lighter load on my shoulder in terms of single-handed dinghy.
So your first step was actually using a club boat. They're available for hire, pay to play, £5. You went out in a topper?
Yeah, I did sail 3 times on a topper just to have a feel whether my shoulder's okay with that boat, because in terms of laser radio, I still find it too heavy in terms of the boat weight, as well as just to put the sail and mast up, I need John's help, whereas in a topper it's very easy to rig and de-rig.
So you were looking at trying to find a lighter boat that was more comfortable for your shoulder. So what sailing have you been doing recently?
And some friends, while they're joking at my bright jowl or call me as a princess glass, and then some friends introduced me RS Aero, and they say that the boat is very light, and I sort of not 100% sure. So when I actually had the boat, I can't believe how light it is. It's lighter than an Optimist, but the speed is similar to laser radio. And then I just couldn't help loving it. So probably I will spend more time in this boat, and which enables me to sail without aggravating my shoulder injury.
So you've just been going for little sails at the moment, no particular desire at the moment to race, but you might actually start doing a little course and going around marks and things now?
Yeah, at the moment I'm only sailing, just relaxing on the water, and then observe and view the nature, as well as the little choppy waters, and just to relax my eyes as well from the media work. And then when gradually I would like to do a bit of rounding marks and then a bit more sheeting, because at the moment I'm doing lazy sailing. So for example, when changing the direction, I will head to wind, and then when the sail's flapping, I sheeting. But since my shoulders feeling fine, probably I will start gradually building up the load and then try to round the mark and tack properly. And maybe I will rejoin some race in the near future.
Oh, okay, that's news to me. So I was just going to talk to viewers a little bit about the Olympics, because this is something which is in everybody's hearts at the moment. And my top tips for Olympics is to do things in a safe way and to do it early. So originally we could get into Tokyo something like the 17th of May, mid-November. So people were organising their containers to get there. And then when people realised that things were a bit delayed, some of the team leaders decided to delay their containers as well. And I think that was probably going to be a mistake for some, because it may mean that their containers now don't get there in time. One thing in life is things always take longer than you think they're going to be, but that's certainly true in Olympic sailing. So with such limited ground space, I'd say the majority of teams are absolutely sorted, all the containers are there, and indeed a lot of the support staff are already there looking at it. But for any teams that are delayed or less things to last minute, I think especially during COVID times, they may have made things very difficult for themselves. But wishing everybody all the best.
Good luck for Tokyo.
Okay, really nice report, John. I asked John to update us on the shipping and also to bring Lily in, also tell us about his home club a little more, which he has done, obviously, and thanks for that. Lily, as you, I'm sure, all know, was the gold medalist in 2012 in Weymouth in the laser radio, what we now call the ILCA 6. They fell in love. Apparently they fell in love. I mean, they're married, so they must, right? Right, Julia?
Yes.
And they're a husband and wife living in, in Weymouth. And she had, in the meantime, Lily has attended uni at the University of Southampton, I believe, and studied communications, broadcasting. Her English is probably better than mine at this point, certainly.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how well she was doing.
Certainly her Mandarin. She also speaks Shanghaise. Did we talk about that before? And obviously a very bright person who is doing Olympic broadcasting, so she'll be there, as with John will be there coaching again. Finnish teams, I believe. Is he Finnish or is that Luca Devoti? I can't remember who's coaching whom. And then she's going on to do the Olympics in Beijing, the Winter Olympics next year. So she's got a full plate as well. And there is no truth to the rumor that RS Aero sponsored this segment. She keeps, the two of them keep mentioning the RS Aero, which she's now sailing, which is a fine boat. And by the way, after our show, and they mentioned it the other day, RS put a big thing on their Facebook page about how they were featured on Sailing Illustrated. So I hope you do the same.
Do the same for us.
Do the same for us as well. Thanks, John. Thanks, Lily. And here's another, this is probably a clickbait report, but this was on the AP this morning by Mary Yamaguchi. As Tokyo Olympics approach, virus worries rise in Japan. The pressure of hosting Olympics during a still active pandemic is beginning to show in Japan. The games begin July 23rd, which is, 13, 22, and 2 weeks and change away. with organizers determined they will go on even with a reduced number of spectators or possibly none at all. While Japan has made remarkable progress to vaccinate its population's COVID-19, the drive is losing steam because of shortage supplies. Again, this was the Associated Press this morning. Last paragraph, we must stay on high alert, the Prime Minister, Yoshihide Suga, told reporters on July 1st, noting the rising caseload. He said, we quote, having no spectators is a possibility. So they seem to have been warming everybody up, Julia, to that possibility, likelihood. And I do hear that there are containers that are not going to make it, sadly, for some of these yachting teams, as you heard John confirm, and I've heard from coaches. Jay Rendell, there's a lot of interesting comments in the last little bit. First of all, did John mow that lawn that was behind him? And they heard the noise. I think it was an airplane flying over, not a lawnmower, right? Mm. And Baton Rouge confirming Evergreen was the company name. Ever Given was the name of the ship that got jammed, kittywampus, in the Suez Canal in March. Hello, Ralph Roberts. Nice to see you on. Global shipping affected Clark Chapin, the delivery of his spinnaker, but that's showing. Did you see Clark Chapin's comment about leeches and bloodletting?
Yes.
Well, I've known Clark a long time, since we were kids, and he has this iron disease, iron syndrome in his blood. He has to go get rid of some of his red platelets in his blood every now and then. Reduced.
I thought he was kidding.
No, that's dead serious. And Stingray was somebody. Jody Shields says, "Oh, that's the most serious comment I've seen on here." Yeah, a great plug for RS. Dan Jasper will be ecstatic. Chapin says,
"Send him a bill."
Great, yeah. Send it. Come on, RS, step up here and send us at least a mug, if not a couple of bucks. Lily is lovely, John Emmett. You are a lucky man, Emmett. Yeah, I think we all agree with that. Pedro Foiling Sailor, Peter Stevens, who made that comment. John needs to be wearing his taller pair of high heels. She is a tall gal.
Yes.
Tall person.
Yes.
I won't pay for ESPN, so I'm watching Univision, although the only Spanish I speak is enchiladas carnitas, David James is saying. It's a project management. If we can't get the 911, we can't. Okay. There's a lot, as I said, people are getting punchy here at the end of the show. If they arrive after 13th July, it won't be a big problem. Well, I hope everybody gets there. There was a helicopter circling us, Emmett says.
Right.
Italy into final on penalties 4-2. So they did have a kick out. And Pindar is saying, hello, Andrew. Thanks again for your coming on the show on Friday. I hope you're safe and sound back at home in Scarborough, a beautiful part of the east coast of England. A couple of quick videos about Tokyo, just to warm us all up again. And I have a question at the end of this. Don't let me forget. I want to ask everybody what we should do about Olympic coverage, because there's been some suggestions, and Emmett asked me this morning about whether we should do some special shows with him from there, depending upon Olympic broadcasting regulations. But just to warm us all up, here's a nice video by World Sailing about Tokyo. Okay, another nice video by World Sailing, quick, short, and sharp, and nice footage. And I like the music. I don't really like the music, but the music behind it with then the titles over, it's good. Here's another video that they've got. They got 2 or 3 on their YouTube channel. Go have a look. This guy, I've met this guy. He is a cool dude and a huge personality in our sport, and we like to cover, news, views, and notables, and this guy's a notable. Have a look. Mattia Camboni.
This year was the best year of my life. I'm vice world and vice European champion after Kiran that won both the competition. He's a really good guy. But I'm so happy about my results. It's really hard to stay always there. And this year, I think I'm doing really, really well. So I can't wait to go to the Olympics. And I had also many other good results, like in 2018 I won the European Championship, silver medal at the test event. So I think I'm right. I really want to go to the Olympics because we are working for this moment, for that moment, since the last 4 years. So can't wait. First time I really think to the Olympics was in 2012 when I had the honor to train with Alessandra Sensini for her last Olympic Games in London. She called me as sparring partner, and there, in that moment, I understand I want to do this in my life. I want to try to do the Olympic and try to get a medal maybe one day. It was like a dream come true. I was so young, so it was like I went there only for living a good experience. I didn't have a goal. I went there and said, okay, I want to have fun, understand what is it, and maybe have experience for the future. So I had a lot of fun, and I also did quite good. I finished 10, so I had the honor to do the medal race. It was good enough for my first Olympic. I really hate to lose. So every time I lose, I say, okay, now I will go home and train hard, even harder than what I already did. I never give up. Also, if I'm last, I try till the end to come back. This helped me a lot. And then I don't know, I'm pretty smart in the race course, so I'm pretty good sailor. I think. I don't like to say this. Yeah, of course, now the target is pretty high because this year was the best year, as I said, and I really would like to have a medal. Like it's the dream of everyone. Everyone is working for this. And there are only 3 medals and 1 gold, so it will be not easy, but I will do my best for reach that goal.
And you don't have to know him to say what a cool guy this guy is, right?
Yes, and happy.
And indeed, and happy, and a competitor, and he's a big, strong horse, and by all accounts, a hell of a sailor. And you talk about big, strong people. There is this class. And I'm really sad to see them apparently going. I hope they're back. But this is an example of a good class when you can, at your national championship, other than lasers, I don't know what other class in the U.S. you can come up with 15 kind of Grand Prix entries, as they did last week at the Finn Nationals down at Corpus Christi Yacht Club down in southern Texas. And the conditions were fantastic. The racing was close. And by all accounts, it was a super event, including our Fozy James Bland, J. Frederick Bland, as I like to call him. Over 60 years, he says, of refinements in this class. The Finn is a pleasure to sail. I've started to zero in on the fine-tuning, but still sacrifice. Yeah, I mean, he's got to be maybe not quite my age, but he's also 60-ish, I think. But still sacrificing races to learn. The conditions and race management at Corpus were world championship level, as was the competition. And look at these big, strong men and some women, Rhodey Mazin, and John Dane, who's been a perennial in this class, as well as in the start class for match racing, it from the start of the final race, taking it to the left and covering each other all the way to the winter mark. John Dane couldn't match Rhodey's downwind speed, but took the top master award. Nevertheless, the fight for third place between Nikita Mazin must be a brother, I assume, and Rob Coots. You know who that is?
Yes.
The brother of Russell, who's living here in the U.S. in San Diego, I believe, and is sailing, representing the Mission Bay Yacht Club. So Rob won in a tie break. He's also the top great grandmaster, showing stamina and skills commendable for the weather conditions. And Charles Rudinsky took the overall win over Henry Sprague in the Legends. But this is what it's about. It's the camaraderie. It's everybody getting together, raising beers. You can see Bland 1, 2, 3, 4th from the right. And just a bunch of characters. You talk about rugby players. These are the rugby players of our sport. Happy warriors, tremendous competitors, come back to shore, help each other out. And it's a sad day for our sport that this class is getting the flick because of the culture and the history and the tradition and the legends and on and on and on. Again, I ask, what other Olympic class in your country, let alone in this country, can generate that kind of a tournament? That's 15 boats. Okay, it's not a huge number. It's not 1,200 boats in around the island race, but an tough Olympic class, the laser.
But they have 350 in the Finns, and they're just regular.
Well, in their masters, and exactly, in their masters and their worlds. And bravo Zulu, and that's courtesy of the U.S. Finn Association. Those nice pictures from Mike Malloy and the Corpus Christi Yacht Club. Terrific stuff. Okay, I'm going to continue on with our Olympic theme, and I'm going to ask you now whether it's true or false. Is it correct or Crutonic about some of these Olympic sports of days gone by? The first one is obviously chariot racing. Was this in the Olympics ever, or was it not? And that's an easy one. You should all know that in the ancient Olympics, was there chariot racing? Well, yes, indeed, there was. Chariot racing was seen as one of the events that helped found the Olympic Games in Greece. Yada, yada. The races were held in arenas called the Hippodrome.
Oh, the Hippodrome.
You got to read it over on this monitor.
Oh, yeah.
Because on your new monitor, little monitor. The race was often across 3.5 kilometers to 14 kilometers and varied in the number of chariots. Last paragraph. All the glory went to the winning owner. Sound familiar?
Aha.
Which meant the Hippodrome was seen as a symbol of wealth and power. Chariot racing.
Aha.
In the ancient Olympics, okay? So it is correct. Chariot racing's been in the Olympics. Julie, you got to watch the comments to see who gets these right. Okay, croquet. Has croquet ever been in the Olympics? Emmett saying, I'm sure the charioters were very disappointed when it was removed from the slate. It would be, just think how much fun that would be if the chariots were still in the games. They should have modern, forget about ballroom dancing and all this. If you wanted to have a television show, have modern day chariot racing with those things on the wheels, that had the knives that cut on the wheels.
Yeah.
That, you pulled over, the other guy was getting close to you and pulled over and it cut the hell out of you. Now we're talking. What a good idea. Emma.
Yes, indeed.
Who else here? The kids at White Bear Lake learned to play hockey in a Hippodrome here. Yeah, the parking lot across from the New York Yacht Club at West 44th Street is called the Hippodrome. I never knew why, but now we do. Back to croquet. Has that been in the Olympics? In the modern Olympics, obviously. Yes or no? Correct or Crutonic? One of the more unlikely sports to have taken part as an Olympic event is croquet. In the early part of the modern games, many sporting events were chosen by the host nation. In 1900, the Olympic Games were held in Paris, and croquet made it its exciting introduction. France won all the medals, but all 10 players that signed up, I guess they played the Brits, they were all French on the Brit team, too. Talk about not having proper nationality. There were women, too. 3 women took part in the event, which was the first time since the ancient games. However, the sport was not popular among spectators. I can imagine why. And only a single Englishman traveled from Nice to watch. The sport did make an appearance in 1904 under the American name Rock, but didn't make it to another Olympic Games. The Americans hosted 1904 in St. Louis, and of course that's their meet me in St. Louis, meet me at the fair. And there was no sailing because in those days there was no water. There were none of those nice reservoirs. So croquet is also correct. Now, how about this event? Now, that is not tractor pulling. This is training behind a tractor, the British team, training for tug of war. Has that been in the Olympics?
Yes, it has.
You're right. It has been. It's correct. A part of the ancient games, tug of war was a sport in the Olympic Games until 1920. The sport consisted of 2 teams of 8, and the aim was obviously to pull your opponents past the line, normally 6 feet away. While no longer an Olympic sport, the activity remains popular around the world. So popular that they had a demonstration event in Rio 2016, a mixed gender tug of war, correct or Crutonic, a Rio demonstration. There it is on the beach in 2016. Correct or Crutonic?
It looks like it.
It does, but it's Crutonic.
Oh.
Did not happen. It did not happen. But it's now there's another event. Have a mixed gender tug of war, the women in bikinis and the men in Speedos, and you'd have a huge television audience, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Look at, she's got a terrible outfit on. She should be like the volleyball players in a skimpy two-piece bikini. Come on, what's wrong with these marketing mavens? Now, here's another one. Correct or Crutonic, motorboating. Have you ever heard of motorboating in the Olympics?
I haven't.
Also known as powerboat, and this is, I don't want Jody Shields to start going, brr, brr. You know what motorboating is? If you can shake your finger.
Oh, really? I don't.
It's okay. I'll tell you after the show. My mother will tell you. Jody will DM you and tell you. Motorboating, also known as powerboating, the unusual Olympic sport consisted of 3 motorboat racing events. It took place in the UK at the 1908 Olympics in the waters off Southampton, but the event didn't go to plan. 2 boats competing on the first day abandoned the race halfway through the first lap, while the only remaining competitor didn't finish because of the poor weather. Second day saw a boat run aground and only remaining competitor going unopposed and crossing the line and claiming gold. Guess what? The event did not return to the games. You got to look into this stuff, right?
Yeah, you do.
Now, how about this? You know what sport this is? Was this in the Olympics? Popular sport, early part of the last century. This is live pigeon shooting. Correct or Crutonic? Was that ever in the Olympic Games?
I could have been.
Rob Fry saying, except it would attract all the weightlifters, not good in bikinis and Speedos and the tug of war. How about live pigeon shooting? Matthias Collins, people in power boats have poor skills on the water. Yes, indeed. Prince Philip was keen. Yeah, but was this in the Olympics? While various shooting events take place today, back in 1900, the aim was for competitors to shoot down as many live pigeons as possible. The sport was described as très aristocratique. I practiced that, which means very aristocratic. Thank you. The sport didn't take off after nearly 300 birds were killed for the event, and the field was reportedly littered with blood and feathers.
Oh, we could do without that.
Huh?
We could do without that.
I know, but you got to look into this. Then somebody, Belgian, won the event after killing 21 of the 300 birds, but the Olympics don't officially count this as a medal. It was the only time an animal has been killed on purpose during the game. So I think it's correct that it was in the games, but they didn't award a medal. So if you also said Crutonic,
it was Crutonic.
It was Crutonic. And you would also probably be right. Final question, is this sport darts? Has that ever been in the Olympics?
I sort of remember that was once.
One of the most popular sports in the world, if you call it a sport.
Yeah.
Brits certainly do. Any bar, all of us hockey players used to go to the bar afterwards and play darts.
Right.
Try not to throw them into the back of one of your competitors. While darts may not take much vigor, as JFK would have said, many considered a sport. There have been great efforts by various official dart organizations to get darts into the Olympics, and the Olympic Committee have said it may become incorporated in the 2024 games. I believe that has since been shot down. No pun intended.
Oh.
Huh? Yeah. Come on. I just made that up. So, no, it's Crutonic. The darts have not been in the Olympics, and I don't believe they're going into 2024, unless one of you knows better than I. That might have been better than break dancing or ballroom dancing, or
yes,
maybe even kiting.
Cornhole.
Jonathan Frank, can't wait. You see that comment? Can't wait until cornhole is deemed a proper Olympic sport. Well, we won't ask Jody Shields to tell you about what cornhole is. You know what a real cornhole is? Those boards where you throw the bags of corn.
Of corn, yeah.
From a distance and into the. But there's also some other meanings to that expression. Okay, enough of that. We've got now our latest edition of, what's the official title? Road to the Governor's Cup 2021. I'm having a senior moment here. And this is Jack Egan from San Diego Yacht Club. We recorded yesterday. Terrific guy. Have a look. This is our third episode of Road to the Governor's Cup. 2021, the 54th edition of the prestigious International Youth Sailing Match Racing Championship, hosted annually by Balboa Yacht Club, except for last year during the pandemic. And I'm delighted again to have with us our Gov Cup guru, Andy Rose, down in Newport Beach. And then a little further south, today's guest, super sailor from San Diego Yacht Club, Jack Egan. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Tom.
Take it away.
Well, let's see. Jack is going to be coming to the Governor's Cup this year. I think your first time as skipper, Jack?
Correct.
Yeah. First, I think, Tom, why don't you introduce yourself? I think how old are you, 20?
I'm 19 years old.
19, all right. Well, you have some more Governor's Cups ahead of you. Tell us about, you have your team SDYC shirt on. Both Tom and I have spent many hours at that club and offshore and racing and all that. It's a fantastic club. But Tom, you had a great question because you named some good names there.
Well, Andy, I would just ask to kick it off. You know, we all know what a great club that is, and I'm a former member when I was down there with the Cup. And you go back to Malin Burnham and Lowell North and Dennis Connor and, you know, more recently now J.J. Fetter, Nevin Sayer, Caleb Payne, the Olympian, our last Olympian in this country. Jack, is there something in the water? Is there something in the air? What produces these great sailors such as yourself?
Yeah, you know, it's a great question. You know, I just think San Diego has all the aspects that you look for. They have the good weather. You know, we can sail year round. Water stays warm enough. We have that history of a lot of great sailors, and they have a really good reputation of just kicking it back to the club and always helping out junior sailors. So it really creates a pretty unique positive feedback loop. You know, we have Point Loma High School, which practices right out of San Diego, coached by Steve Hunt, who's been doing that for a number of years and has produced a lot of those recent sailors, you know, and a encouraging community around the whole thing. So it's a really good spot to be for a young sailor.
Yeah, Jack, I note that in your request for invitation, you won the high school. How many times have you won the high school nationals?
I won fleet racing 3 times and team racing once.
That's a pretty great record. You're off to Yale or somewhere like that, I believe?
Yep, I have done 1 semester of Yale with COVID and stuff. I didn't end up doing the spring semester, but I'll be returning there at the end of August and doing some college sailing.
Well, you'll see our friend Christophe Chamont, I think, will be here for Governor's Cup to help with the media team, as he's done now for a couple of years. And we're looking forward to seeing him. As I've said earlier in the year, though, I'm looking forward to seeing anyone after last year. So, well, that's quite a record. But the reason you're here is because of the United States Youth Match Racing Championship for the Rose Cup. And tell us about that, because that was quite a series. I really wish I could have been there, but you had some of the top match racers in the country. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was a really, really great event this year. This was my 4th Rose Cup, I believe. I started off as young as I could, 15 or 16. And I spent 2 years main trimming, trying to learn the ropes a little bit, and tried the skip ring for the first time at the one in San Diego, which you guys were there for, I believe. And, you know, had some mixed results. I felt the potential, but couldn't quite get it down. And then this year, it's my last year age-wise, and coming off the back of the pandemic, we're definitely looking to have a great regatta, and it was Rochester did a great job. They kind of had to throw it together a little bit last minute because everything was so uncertain, but they were super, super accommodating. The conditions were great. I mean, the last round or the final, it got to 20 plus knots, which definitely threw an extra little factor in for the already intense match racing. And it was the first year that they did the double round robin format, which made for a lot of racing for sure. But it was a really good time. lots of great competitors. Pretty cool to be able to compete against Jeffrey and David, who are doing Youth Worlds and Gov Cup here in this next coming months. And yeah, it was a great time for sure.
I guess nobody ever warned you that I've done a bit of match racing in my life, and winning every race in the double round robin is almost assuredly going to leave you without winning the regatta. It's bizarre. I cannot believe how many times that has happened over many years. But it is, as I was talking to Dave Perry about it, and he laughed, and he says, "Yeah, that's true." But he says, "But I'd still rather win every race of the round robin." And I couldn't agree with him more. That is quite a record, especially against David and Jeffrey, who you mentioned. Jeffrey's already been on this series, and we will be having David. As you say, they were the two skippers anointed by U.S. Sailing to sail in the World Championships, which Balboa Yacht Club will host 2 weeks after the Governor's Cup. And they've done a lot of matches, more than you, and sailed in all sorts of places. So to come out and do that to them is pretty awesome. I know Jeffrey got you at the end there, but he said it was. Jeffrey said it was pretty exciting racing, and sometimes too exciting. But anyway, well, that's great. So you got second. You got to the finals and got second, and that got you the Governor's Cup invitation. We have since, just FYI, invited Morgan Pinckney and Owen Lahr, who will both be attending, because they were pretty close to you guys, I think. I sort of sense that the top 5 in that group were all fairly close. Is that your thought?
For sure.
So, this year has been weird, as you know, and unfortunately the New Zealanders couldn't come, nor could the Australians, and nor could the British. But we have Sweden, Denmark, and the first entry ever from metropolitan France. We've had an entry from New Caledonia, but this will be from metropolitan France. Mathieu Richard is a World Match Racing Tour great sailor, and has really taken on, I call him the Dave Perry of France.
Okay, this goes on for a few more minutes. It's interesting to see a lot of people like Xavier Scheid show up. There must be texting around at San Diego Yacht Club to say, hey, they're featuring our club. And Jack Egan, one of our top sailors. We will post this on the Balboa Yacht Club site, on my personal Facebook page, on the Sailing Illustrated page, and we're going to put this the group of these things together because these kids are wonderful. Andy, of course, does a great job interviewing them, and it does go on for a few more minutes. And as I said, have a look, because it gives you, as Andrew likes to say, it gives you some confidence. Julia, you and I were just talking here.
Yes.
Gives you some confidence in the future of the sport, future of the world, when you see what these kids are all about, right?
They are, and on many levels.
On many levels. So having said that, we'll post that. Go have a look. In the meantime, we also yesterday recorded, we'll air it on Friday's show. We did a terrific interview, another terrific interview. This is the 4th edition, fourth episode. This was with Emil Kiar, whom I had just met yesterday by Zoom. Obviously Danish, from the Royal Danish Yacht Club. And this kid is also bright and motivated and focused and a superstar. We will have that interview on Friday's TFE Live as we continue our series, The Road to the 54th Governor's Cup, which is at the end of this month down at Balboa Yacht Club, the prestigious International Youth Match Racing Championship. We want to do a quick Bravo Zulu to a few events, a few people. And again, thank you to all of you who send these in, because there's so much now that the sport seems to be back in the swing of things. My mom wanting to know what a pie hole is? It's your mouth. Your cornhole's something different.
Yeah, that comes up. That comes next.
That would deal. But look at this. We had, when we had Pindar on here the other day, when we were talking about Foiling Week at Garda, this was the Moth Regatta, the Moth part of that regatta. Cool stuff. The Liberty Bitcoin Moth Cup, won by guess who?
It's been a really good few days. We've had really we had really great conditions yesterday. Quite a strong breeze, like 12 to 16 knots. It's been very close racing in the top, and it's been a lot of fun racing against some of the world's best sailors.
So we're here for foiling week in Lake Garda. It's been some great conditions. The moth racing here is obviously quite high up the agenda. There's a lot of boats come and arrive here, and the racing is just fantastic. It's high performance boats, up foiling, going super fast with lots of guys all enjoying themselves.
So mod sailing is the next generation sailing, and you can compare on Bitcoin because it's a new generation, the new generation of currency.
Yep. Yeah, the event was great. Foiling week, it's my
Tommy
first foiling
Slingsby.
week, but I loved it. Beautiful Lake Garda and all these different foiling classes. For me, look, I was fortunate I had a bit of a speed edge. My boat and foils and sails and rig were pretty quick, so I was sailing a little bit low risk on the starts, and then I was able to use my speed advantage and have a good event. But I loved it. It was so much fun out here with all the foiling classes, and I'll be back next year.
Okay, bravo Zulu to Liberty Bitcoin and to Foiling Week and to Icarus who produced that. Another nice video, and everybody involved there at Lake Garda, Lago di Garda at the Foiling Week 2021. What do you say? They say it was the 12th. There's been at a few other places.
Yeah,
I
think 12th is right.
And again, if you didn't see that show, that was last Friday's show when we had Andrew Pindar on from Lake from Trattoria.
Yeah, which
was good,
yes.
good fun. Bravo Zulu also. I'm sorry to say it. I'm sorry. I will till I go to my grave. I will be complimenting the Finn class in Quiberon last week. The French Finn Masters had a big turnout in France, and this was the Legends division. You see who's on the left, Julia? That's Gerardo. That's Gerardo.
I was going to say
Seeliger,
Gerardo, yes.
Who's at age 70-something was second. So bravo salute to them, and especially to our good friend, longtime friend Gerardo. And finally, you know who this boat is? Nice photo by S. Seaman Photography.
Oh, yes.
You know who that is? Mm-mm. That is DeRaid.
Oh, is
and
that
they,
DeRaid?
yeah, that's DeRaid, and that's Captain Matt. That's Matt Brooks, who's a member here at New York. Pam Rourke Levy, the two of them campaigned this boat for years. They won the New York Yacht Club Annual Regatta. They've won the Classic. They won the Around the Island race in Newport there on Connecticut Island. They were sixth in the Leukemia Cup in ORCB, which is pretty remarkable for a boat that dates from 1930 something.
Yeah.
I've forgotten now.
Yeah, it's a beauty.
And last week they had in Newport they have these classic yacht regattas, and down in the islands too, meaning the Elizabeth Islands. And bravo Zulu to Matt Brooks and Pam Rourke Levy for the job they did. And also I have to mention that the 18-footer worlds have concluded, and John Harris and his brother John Peter and Scott Babbage have won handily the JJ, what is it, Gittelin, I think it is, which is their championship, their trophy, the 18-footer worlds. The Harris brothers, bravo Zulu, congratulations. And there's more on the 18footer.com.au if you want to have a look at that. The America's Cup, I'm going to report only one thing, and I think, you heard it here, I think this is the shape of the future. Ineos, Mr. Sir Ineos, as I call him, Sir James Ratcliffe is backing, that was Freudian, backing clean hydrogen funding. He's funding planning a UK float, a chemicals company his chemicals company, Ineos, to invest at least £25 million in Hydrogen One capital growth as it targets the green economy. And they're not only doing hydrogen development, but they're also going to build out a whole hydrogen distribute, like gas stations, hydrogen stations. And Ineos is doing that. Do you think there is a hydrogen future in the America's Cup? Those boats, instead of being powered by batteries, will they be powered by hydrogen fuel cells? What do you think, Julia?
Could happen.
You're a futurist. You're a techno nerd.
And who believes in wooden boats?
Well, don't we all? History and tradition as well.
Yes.
Okay.
John Green.
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. For some reason, all of the submissions had a common theme for today's show. This was the first one that Julia and Stingray both sent me.
My doctor told me yesterday that I have to cut my alcohol. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but I'll give it a try.
These TikTok videos are too much. I'm going to cut my alcohol. I mean, they're so silly. It's like the one.
Yeah.
Remember the one where the woman is standing there in the doorway of her home on the street, and she said, somebody came by and said, they'd give me a bottle of booze if I'd show them my boobs. Well, and she's being interviewed by somebody, her daughter or somebody.
It's like,
of course not. And then she says, well, I don't know where he went, but he just took off in that direction, and she holds out her hand, and you see it come into frame, the bottle of wine or whatever it was. These TikTok videos are funny, though.
Yeah, they are.
And they're all kids. I mean, they're for the most part kids. Courtesy of Julia and Stingray, that TikTok. Here was the second one. Do alcoholics run in your family? No, they sail. Kermit the Frog is saying to Miss Peggy. Finally, this oldie but goodie from Dave Barry, the Miami columnist and humorist. This was sent in by Jeff Waller in Australia. How to sail a sailboat, figure out where you want to go. And this has been one of his columns. Whichever way it is, do not aim the sailboat in that direction.
Everybody's done that.
Right?
Yes.
Do not. Aim the sailboat in some other direction. Trust me, this is the way sailboaters do it. Finally, point 5, they are heavy drinkers. Courtesy of Jeff Waller.
Yeah.
One of our foes down in Sydney, and the producer of Week on Water, WOW.
Yes.
Sending that around. Finish line. I love this segment since we added this just a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And by the way, before we go, speaking of beautiful photos, we want to credit, what was the gentleman?
John Green.
John Green. Thank you, Julia. John Green, Andrew McIrvine tells us, is the photographer who took those pictures in the Round the Island race segment that Andrew and I were talking about, but Andrew sent the pictures, courtesy of John Green in the UK. Thank you. And this is a beautiful photo from Lago di Garda, where the Optimus Worlds are going on. We told you about that on Friday, and I think they're through now. Are they in the team racing and now into the, I can't remember. Thailand's once again doing very well, but look at that beautiful photo.
Mm-hmm.
Take the lower third off. Is that beautiful or what?
Yes, absolutely.
You said last week you'd love to be in Garda. You got to go back there. That is courtesy of Zero Gradi Nord, the website and magazine in Italy. Finally, to Wingrove and the rest of you, Bill Wingrove in Texas, in Florida, it's going up. Thankfully, I say thankfully because if we're going up the East Coast where all those people are trying to dig out what clearly are going to be casualties at this point after more than a week in that collapsed condo building, which yesterday they collapsed the rest of they brought down the rest of it with explosives, right? But it's a good thing the hurricane is going to the west and not up the East Coast.
Yeah, they were very worried about it.
And that's the story, 2 p.m. Tuesday, 2 a.m. Wednesday. And stay safe down there, everybody who is in that neck of the woods, courtesy of AccuWeather.com. Before we go to our traditional closing slides, send us your thoughts on the Olympics. Emmett and I are trying to tee up something. We can't live. We could have a Zoom party. If Jobson is one of the guys covering it for NBC, he won't be there. Gary's going to be in Connecticut in the studios of NBC, whoever it is.
Yeah.
And maybe we could do something with a Zoom party if we're really keen to watch the medal race days, the last 2 days of the medal races. The last days of, I think there's 2 different segments. Let us know. We are going to stay on Facebook, by the way. And I am also posting the show up to YouTube now. At the conclusion of each show, I have a little bit of breakfast, and then I post it up to YouTube straight away, so you can watch the show on YouTube if you don't want to watch it here on Sailing Illustrated. Julia, you like to say,
Don't miss the opportunity to like, follow, and share.
Indeed, and comments are welcome too, even in replay. If you're watching in replay, as most people do, support us on Patreon. Thank you, Mark Wharton Reed, again. Patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. And I have one other idea I want to talk to you about while we have the credits up. Julia, I mentioned this to you when I went up to your place the other day and fixed a cocktail, and you liked the idea of the roast.
Yes.
And here's the idea. You know, we've had a couple. We had a commemorative for the late, great Henry H. Anderson Jr., Commodore Harry Anderson of New York Yacht Club. A whole bunch of people came on the big screen here on Zoom. We had you all up there and had you up on the show. And it was a huge success. We did the same for Bob Fisher after he passed away, and had a big commemorative thing with, 20 or 30 people, videotapes, terrific segment. And I got to thinking, why do we wait till somebody dies before we do a tribute? Why don't we do a celebrity roast? Like, they used to like who was it? Dean Martin. The television shows in this country, I'm sure in your countries as well. Why don't I get my poor old back here? Why don't we take a celebrity in our sport, put them on here, and roast them?
Yeah.
Like Andy Rose does with those kids on Monday nights down at Gov Cup. Let's say, this is your life. You all that want to come on, people that know the person, and celebrate them. Not somebody who is going to die anytime soon, but just somebody who's maybe been around the sport for quite a while.
And nobody pays attention to.
And nobody pays attention to. Well, they maybe pay attention to.
Yeah.
They probably do pay attention. But people want to come on and say, I remember when, we were at this, Henderson will come on and
I'll never forget. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But with great stories. So let me know what you think about that. I think that might be good fun to do it with contemporaries, with people who are around, who are going into halls of fame and so on.
Yeah.
Senior series people, to be sure, and not wait till they pass away to have one of these tributes, these memorials, and do that too.
Yeah, and we might want to think about the name of it. And it isn't a funeral, and it's not a roast. I mean,
well, that's what Chapin is saying. Clark's saying it's not a roast, isn't the right term. Well, it might be a roast.
It could be. We want a little bit of that in it because it's got to be funny.
Exactly.
As well as sincere.
And Mary Jude says she wants to have an Olympic Zoom. Mary Jude really she's in Philadelphia and has become one of our biggest fans. She really liked those America's Cup Zoom. Well, they weren't cocktail party, although some of us probably were having. We were having cocktails.
Yeah.
Because it was late at night here or in the evening. But I think that's a good idea, Julia, to maybe to do some Olympic honoring. Well, Clark, you're our navigator. You come up with a toast. Stingray is saying, Richard Gooderick, he'll have an idea. K.R. Baird, Madrigali, Matthias Collins. Yeah, people like that.
Yeah.
People who've been around. I was thinking Tom Whidden. I was thinking P.J. Montgomery. I was thinking the CYCA, Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, is doing videos with some of their senior series people. And gentleman Jim, I'll come up with it. James Hardy.
James Hardy.
They've did a couple interviews with him, and it was terrific. And we get Jim Hardy on here and let people come on and say, I remember Jim and back in Newport, or more recently.
Yeah.
I don't know. So let me know what you think.
Both Newports.
Let me know what you think. If you think that's a good idea, we'll do it. Thanks all who gave us video and so on today, and a lot of stuff. I had to, Julia, advance that, make that picture, the text smaller, because we had so much stuff in today's show.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you on Friday. In the meantime, do sail safe. Do sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao. Bye. No, Ted Ryman, we're not going to do a roast of... Maybe we should do a roast of Andy Hunt. What a good idea.